Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the September Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Taylor Fudge. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, and as the hardest working commission in Oklahoma City, we have the full agenda, and it's my goal to get everyone out of here today, so be thorough and also be mindful of your time. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during the meeting. This will ensure commission members and applicants can hear each other. Please remain quiet until you're called upon. When you speak, please state your name and address into the microphone here at the podium for our records. Before the commission votes on each item, we will ask if any citizens wish to speak, and anyone speaking will be given 3 minutes to relay information to the commission members. If we must stop this meeting for any reason and we're unable to continue, all remaining items will be moved to the next regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission meeting, which will take place on Wednesday, October 5th at 2 p.m. right here in council chambers. The agenda and document for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, select Agenda on the right-hand side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see the items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting were posted online and were shared with commission members. And at this point, new materials may not be shared with the commission. So if you brought information with you today that has not already been submitted, please leave that at your seat as we cannot accept it and review it. Desiree, can you please call roll?
Commissioner Fudge.
Present.
Commissioner Raymond Phillip. Commissioner Corbin. Commissioner Gaines.
Present.
Commissioner Jordan.
Present.
Commissioner Meacham. Commissioner Milner.
Present.
Commissioner Poore. Commissioner Ramey.
Present.
Thank you. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda, and for the sake of time, we will ask that anyone who is unfamiliar with the process, please refer to that procedures section. There are 2 items that we like to specifically address regarding the meeting process, and those involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review, inspection, or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeals to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, do we have any news from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Anything that we need to move on the agenda?
I do not believe so. I think everything's where it's supposed to be.
Perfect. Moving on to the acceptance of minutes. Have my fellow commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the August 3rd meeting? And do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to accept or modify?
I move approval of the August 3rd minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, second by Commissioner Jordan. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Has everybody had a chance to vote in PrimeGov? Commissioner Milner, Commissioner Remy? Are we seeing it? Oh, there we go. Okay, that was passed unanimously. Okay. No, that's not right. No, it was passed. Katie, anything from code enforcement?
Nothing particular to report. As always, if you see an item in the code enforcement report that's attached to your packet, feel free to reach out to staff or to the Action Center with questions.
Perfect. Any continuance announcements or requests?
We have no continuance requests and no new requests since the agenda was posted.
Do we have anything under the public hearing section, specifically dilapidated structures or National Register nominations?
We have no dilapidated structures, no National Register nominations this month, and we have 3 items on the consent docket.
Excellent. Has everybody had a chance to look at those, and do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent docket, or do we need to pull any of those to discuss?
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the consent docket.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, seconded by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that is also passed unanimously. If you're on the consent docket, congrats, your project is approved. You now have the option to stick around for the remainder of the meeting or head out. And we will move on to our cases for individual consideration. We've got 11 today, starting with number one, HPCA 22-00067 at 1545 Northwest 36th Street. Is the applicant present?
This is in Putnam Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Devin Holloway for certificate of appropriateness to 1 construct garage elective. This was heard by the commission last month. The commission requested several revisions to be made to the proposed garage. The applicant has since revised the size to be consistent with the guidelines and incorporated a roof form that approximates the historic roof form of the garage as viewed from the street, which was another request of the commission. The applicant has changed materials to be consistent with the guidelines, as was also previously discussed. This was approved, or this is recommended for approval with conditions that some additional details for the elevation drawings, site plan, floor plan be submitted, consistent with the documentation we need to provide in the certificate of appropriateness. The previously submitted application included all of those details, and you have, most of you have copies of those at your seats. I think I didn't have quite enough copies of his previous submittal. This round was a quick revision to document the changes to the size and the shape and the proportions of the garage, so some of those details aren't shown on the drawings. We would just need those to be updated for the certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Any citizens that wish to speak on this particular project? Okay, so it looks like staff has recommended approval with conditions. Can we recommend approval as long, I mean, the applicant's not here, you know, to basically say, we'll approve this if you provide the documentation? Or do we have to do a continuance on that?
It's subject to the conditions, so as long as he provides the conditions to in a timely manner.
Yeah, and if they were to be unable to meet those conditions, it would just come back to the commission.
Okay.
If for some reason they
So
weren't.
because it says agreed upon, and they're not here to agree upon.
That's the only concern. The other option is obviously just continue. Do they have continuances left, do we know?
They do have one continuance left, I believe.
I hate to do that if they're close. I mean, do you feel that it's something staff can?
I'm confident that they will be happy to provide this and that staff can handle reviewing that with the applicant. So,
Why not?
and you could perhaps strike agreed upon from the motion.
with
Just don't
conditions?
indicate that they're agreed upon. And then if the applicant in fact does not agree, we'll
Could we
we'll
just
bring
change it
back.
to recommended conditions?
Correct me.
Change it to following.
Or just
Yeah.
With the following conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have
Does
anything?
anybody want to,
Okay. Well, I will move to approve HPCA 22-00067 with the recommendations noted in the staff report.
I'll second.
moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Everybody hit the green button? There we go. That motion has passed unanimously. We'll move on to item number 2, HPCA 22-00069 at 2109 North Broadway Avenue.
This is located in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Brad Trice, Trice Construction, for Oksana Dijic, QWAK, for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct an addition elective, 2, construct garage elective, and 3, install driveway elective. The commission has heard this a couple of times now. I believe we've seen this twice before, so this will be their last hearing. Since the previous meeting, the applicant has reduced the size of the proposed garage down to a 1-car garage and has reduced the proposed paving at the garage to minimize the lot coverage. They're still at about 58% lot coverage when we include existing and proposed structures, paving. If this were a standard size lot, they would be below 50%, but it is an unusually small lot. Beyond the lot coverage, all of the proposed changes to the property appear to meet applicable guidelines and regulations, and staff has recommended approval with unique circumstance.
It looks like there's several things, garage doors painted, topical treatment on the drive, but all that's noted in the specific findings. Is the applicant present? Excellent. Can you state your name and address for the record at the podium, please?
Okay.
If you don't mind this one, that'd be perfect.
Brad Trice, 7342 Roxborough, Oklahoma City.
Perfect. So staff has recommended approval. Sounds like there are a couple of conditions. Is there any questions from commission members on this particular item?
I just have a question, kind of probably more for staff. In the specific findings, 58% I agree is getting really close to what is allowable or what is recommended, but in the specific findings, it references that the site is small, and it seems that there's kind of a dependence on using the small lot as a defense for these proposals. And I guess I just have concerns about that moving forward, not necessarily specifically to this case, but the dependence on a small lot as a defense for what you want to put onto it seems it seems like a line we shouldn't cross, because it feels to me that it's opening a can of worms for everybody to just go, well, my lot's too small to support the pool I want. My lot is too small, my lot is too small, and we buy the lots knowing exactly how big they are.
Now, I think that is a very good point. I think that looking at the combination of the lot size and at what is being proposed is important. I think there's a distinction that can be made between a garage that it's not technically a necessity, but it's pretty widely expected that you should be able to have shelter to park a vehicle in, and that's different from a pool or from a very large, outdoor patio deck kind of space. The addition is within the range of sizes that we allow for an addition, and that size was landed upon as being a reasonable amount of square footage to allow someone to expand an existing structure, however large or small the structure already was. But I think that's a very valid point, and it may be something that we need to further finesse the wording to address the small size, but not say that it's just wide open. If your lot's small, you can do whatever you want, so.
Yeah, definitely a good point. Is there anything in here that is concerning from the commission's perspective that we'd want to discuss with the applicant today, other than obviously lot size? But are you guys comfortable with painting as noted in the specific findings? Are you comfortable with the topical treatment on the driveway and things of that nature?
Pardon me?
The topical treatment on the driveway and the painting of some of the different features, things of that. Are you comfortable with those specific findings as noted in the staff report?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do have comments from the neighborhood in front of each of you as well. And I believe we have a neighborhood representative present if they wish to speak.
Is there anything else you feel like you want to share with the commission before we ask for the citizens' perspective?
No. We did get a topographical on it. We also got a survey done on it for the water issues, which were none. They all drain out. So just want to let you know that.
Okay.
All right.
Is there citizens that wish to speak on this particular item? And if so, can you please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record?
My name is Laura Vaughn. I live at 100 Northwest 21st Street, so the property directly north of this one. I have a couple of issues, just as you mentioned, the same issues with the lot coverage. I grew up in the neighborhood. I'm a realtor. I renovate historic homes myself, and I think it's just too much. Like you said, on a larger home, it might make sense to do that large of an addition, but this is doubling the lot coverage. I think it's just kind of setting a bad precedent for someone to be able to buy a home in a historic neighborhood, just to flip it and really not have other concerns besides maximizing investment, maximizing, square footage, so you can ask more. I'm very concerned about that. Also concerned about drainage issues. Broadway is definitely a low spot in the neighborhood. It floods. We already have some issues with that at my home. And I believe in the first commission meeting, it had been recommended that they get a topographical survey, and I don't know if that's been done. If so, I haven't seen it. So I would like to know how that's going to affect our drainage and the flooding issues that we have.
I'm sorry, I know that we did ask at the last meeting that all of the relevant information be shared with the neighbors. Now, I guess we can't,
We did, we got a packet with the revised plans.
but not the top, you're just saying
no,
not the topographical.
Not the topographical, yeah.
Okay.
There is a topographical survey, and I have the proof of Oksana Deriak. This is 701 Northwest 14th Street. First of all, I would like to ask, are you the owner of the house next door?
I'm not the owner. My parents are the owner. I've been designated as their proxy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
let's
I
split up.
would.
Let's
I
put
would-
you over at this mic, and we'll put, that way we're not have to do the switch on, switch on the mic.
I think that in order to speak on all of this, you need to be a resident of Heritage Hills and be a homeowner. I don't think it is fair to protest against something just as a renter.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys heard me, but I do live in the home. My parents own the home, and they did let staff know I would be representing them as proxy.
Well, we do let renters speak to what's happening around them, so that's okay.
So can you all address the drainage issues and some of the
Yes.
surveys that you all have done too?
Yes, and we did address the topographical survey. We submitted it to the Historic Preservation, and it was as well mailed to the owner of the house.
I've seen everything that was mailed to the owner. We didn't receive it.
Is there, I'm just asking because it seems that every time this submission has come up, this has kind of been the crux of the issue, is that the people who are impacted by it, outside of course, you whose home it is, the people surrounding it don't seem to be receiving the information that y'all say you're sending to them. I don't know where that miscommunication is happening or where this, where this is going awry, but it feels like every time this comes back up, that's kind of the deal. It's like, well, we have it, but we haven't seen it, so we still have a problem.
I'm really, really sorry, but if it is a point that I am missing on the application where the neighbors have to agree and be provided with every piece of paper that I submit to Historic Preservation, then please provide this guidance to me. So I have shared everything I have with them as well as I have with Historic Preservation, every single piece of paper. We're not going to go back and forth what was mailed, what was not. I have a proof of receipt. So once again, I think that we do value having you as a neighbor who rents the house, but at the same time, I would like to speak to the actual owners of the house that they have some concerns on this behalf. This is just simply unfair. There are guidelines and there are rules, and we're following them. So just because you disagree with the construction, this shouldn't be the point of the meeting.
Where is that topographical study in our packet?
So the topographical survey is the first page of the attachments.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And I will be honest, I am not an engineer, and I'm not terribly qualified to read a topographical survey, but they
Yeah.
had one conducted.
Were there any indications that you were able to determine from this that are relevant to this discussion?
Our guidelines talk generally about, we want to direct water away from the historic structures and not contribute to flooding and that sort of thing. But we do not have the technical requirements or the technical expertise to be reviewing and evaluating a project on the basis of what a topographical survey provides. That's a plan review matter, a building, a construction methods matter. That's not really, I understand that it is a serious concern for neighborhoods, but as far as looking at the topographical survey and determining whether or not what they're proposing is adequate is not, in my assessment, the purview of the HP Commission.
Yeah, and I certainly can't make heads or tails of it myself. I guess the topographical, and just thinking back, forgive me, because we're going back like 3 months at this point with this application, but what I am recalling is that this topographical study was essentially performed to address concerns from the neighborhood and the neighbors about the flooding and the watershed. So
And
I
we
think
have-
that is excellent that that has been conducted. To Katie's point, nobody up here, well, I shouldn't speak for everyone. I am not qualified to make sense of this. And so I guess my question to you is, I hear you loud and clear about, that there's not a bullet point checklist about what we're asking you to provide to your neighbors. if this was done simply because of the concerns of the neighborhood and the neighbors, I'm failing to understand why it didn't make it into everyone's hands. I mean, I'm just.
So I'm failing to understand why it didn't, because it did. I have the receipt. And last time I said I will send it via certified mail, and I did. As I sent it to you, there was no point in spending a few $1,000s on a topographical survey, which is not, like you said, a requirement here. So we went above and beyond to please everyone here. Yet, no matter what I present, it comes down to the point that there is a drainage next door that is an issue. That's not my issue. My goal is to improve the neighborhood, not to destroy the neighborhood. And like I said, on my behalf, I have gone above and beyond to prove it to you as a Preservation Society and to everybody else. My goal isn't to drain my sewage into someone else's yard.
No one thinks that's your goal, to be clear. We just love to see everybody walk away from this feeling that they have been heard and that there has been a resolution. I know that Heritage Hills does have a neighborhood historic preservation committee who meets with the residents regularly. Was the topographical shared with them?
It was. Every single piece of document was shared. And once again, I would like to have an owner of the house here. Tomorrow, the house is going to be rented out to a different person. Am I going to spend another $10,000 on a different survey to please somebody who's renting a house? That's just not fair.
So I see the renter, whose parents own the house, as a concerned citizen, and so we want to let every citizen speak on each one of these individual products regardless. I don't know that we necessarily have to have the owners versus the person that's currently occupying the house. In my opinion, they have provided the topical survey to the commission. I think they've done what they needed to do in order to satisfy us. Sounds like they have tried to get that information in the hands of the neighbors. May or may not have gotten that far, but I think that the applicant has done pretty much everything that we've asked of them in this particular instance, and I would be supportive of an approval if we can get there with the other commission members.
And let me ask if I could, I missed the last couple of meetings, so this is fresh to me. I see the topography on here. I can make out some of the contour lines, but not all. But just knowing where this is, isn't everything falling to Broadway?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so I guess I'm not really seeing and then there's a vacated alley behind it. So I'm not seeing
Yeah,
There's no way it would impact the neighbors. There's
Yeah.
no way of us sharing anything here with the neighbors.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that I'm not seeing an undue burden on the adjacent properties because everything's falling to the stormwater system that's along Broadway.
yeah.
So it would be potentially increasing runoff to the city sewer system, stormwater management system, which again would be the purview of the city permitting department. So I guess I'm not really understanding what the drainage issue is.
That's our garage in the picture, and then our neighbors, I guess one house west of us, have a shed at the back of their property as well that also has drainage issues and has a lot of water, thank you, that just tends to pool basically behind my garage, and I'm concerned with more coverage of that other property, that more will continue to run to me. Even if it eventually makes its way to Broadway, it comes generally through my yard and past my garage to get there.
Okay, so you're the neighbor on Broadway
Yes.
to the north?
To the north, yes.
Okay. Which is the shared driveway?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there what is the lot coverage limits or requirements in this particular area?
So this is HP, so we don't have a mathematical regulation for lot coverage. We reference R1 base zoning, which has a lot coverage maximum of 50%. When we look at these, they're at 58% roughly with what's proposed.
So over what is typically done in residential by about 8%, but again, I don't see it as a major challenge in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think just an aside here is we see a lot of cases where there is some tension between neighbors because there's conflicting goals, conflicting values, or what they're trying to achieve. To me, and again, I'm just looking at this for the first time, but if it's a grading issue, I mean, I almost feel like if the concern is getting water not to settle behind the garage structure, which I think is a valid concern, is there a way to create a swale to divert water down the driveway to, is there some reasonable being good neighbors working together to compromise?
Honestly, we don't intend to have a swamp in the backyard either. So nobody is planning to dump the water in the backyard. The water will be diverted out to Broadway. So frankly, by putting a garage out there, if anything, resolves the issue with parking a car in the driveway, which neighbor is often upset about. So having a garage eliminates this issue. Bringing this property back to life helps the neighborhood, helps everyone. I just don't understand what the issue is here. Yes, I get it. The neighbor doesn't want to have the construction workers working there. I see the point. But we are living in a historic neighborhood, and it requires preservation.
This is your primary residence?
No, it is not. I have 701 Northwest 14th Street.
Who will be living in this house? Will
right
it be
now,
a rental?
It's a family members, for one of
I
the
was
family
just
members.
curious at the,
I'm sorry, I feel like we're getting distracted on irrelevant facts.
yes, we are.
So to me, the concerns that you're speaking of, I haven't heard those concerns. I feel like that's not at issue. It's a drainage issue. And looking at the proposed site plan with the new driveway, if the driveway can be sloped so that the
It
water
is
goes
sloped.
to the middle, and I think that's what the neighbor, I don't want to speak for you, but what I'm hearing is the neighbor's concerned with that the construction isn't done so that it diverts the water and traps it behind. And the documentation here doesn't show spot elevations of the concrete, and I think that they're just looking for some commitment or
Assurances.
condition, an assurance that it'll be constructed in such a way that it doesn't create an undue burden on the adjacent property.
Is it reasonable to add that as an agreed upon condition to this case?
Yes, and I think we may already have language, and let me see if we do. We don't have anything in there currently in the findings, but it's not unusual for us to include findings stating that water will be directed away from the historic structures into the street for appropriate drainage, so.
That's a great condition to add, I think. Okay. Do we have a motion on this particular case, or is there any other discussion points that need to be had? So we want to take on the motion on this one? Commissioners? It could be for or against.
Yeah. I'm out of practice on my motions, kind of your cheat sheet. Give me a second to see how I want to say this. Okay, I move to approve case HPCA 22-00069 with the specific findings and unique circumstances stated in the staff report, with the additional condition that the proposed driveway will be constructed in such a way not to divert water onto the adjacent property.
Do we have a second? Moved by Commissioner Remy, seconded by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that motion has passed unanimously. Enjoy. Okay. Moving on to item number 3, HPCA 22-00072 at 120 Northwest 25th Street.
This is located in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Danny Boren for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct shed with carport attached, elective, 2, install paving, elective, and 3, install fence and gate, elective. The commission has seen a portion of this application previously, and the applicant has added the items for paving to extend the driveway and the installation of a fence and gate around the yard. Since the commission last saw this item, the applicant has indicated that they would be willing to paint the structure rather than stain it to make it more compatible with the primary dwelling, and has provided 2 options for location of the structure. One, kind of minimizing the use of paving that is closer to the rear of the structure of the primary dwelling, but that is offset and would be visible from the driveway. Second option that is set further back in the backyard and located farther behind the primary dwelling to minimize visibility of the proposed structure. The applicant has also provided a substitute roof material that was a more appropriate option for this intended use. And I believe those were all the changes that we went through.
Perfect. Hi there. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Danny Boren, 120 Northwest 25th Street.
Perfect. Talk to us about the shed and which option do you prefer?
Before, just a second, sorry, I wanted to clarify this before
Not
we got
shed.
down the path. The staff report says recommend a continuance, but you'll see from my lovely typo that was intended to be a recommendation of approval with conditions. The conditions are listed and the findings are listed for an approval, and I just had a typo and it says continue. So just wanted to clarify that before you all discussed.
And I apologize. I was looking at storage area on the sheet. It is a carport area and storage area, not
Yes.
shed. So talk to us about that. Which do you prefer? Which option are you leaning towards? What have you learned about this structure?
I really, I guess financially, the closer to the house would be better because it'd be less concrete that we would have to lay. But I do like the look of it further back. So it really, if, at the end of this, if it is approved, do I need to say one way or another right now?
No, I was just kind of interested
Okay.
which way you were leaning. My personal opinion, and this is just my
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah,
is-
I like the look of the further back one, but I know that'll be a little more of an investment, and I have not run any of this by my husband yet, so.
So I like the look of it further back too. My issue with the shed in general is I do think it does detract from the property a little bit. It's not the finest looking carport that I've seen, but I do think putting it in, certainly if it's a little bit further back with the slab does lend itself for potentially somebody to come in and put in a full-fledged garage at some point too, which I think is appealing. Staff has, I think, recommended approval on this particular item. I think with some changes, I can support that as well.
Okay,
And again, it's just my own humble opinion as to what I
Okay.
think that looks like. So that's where I'm at with it. Any other questions from commissioners? Any comments that we want to discuss with the applicant?
No, not from me necessarily. I mean, I agree with you. The staff has stated that the condition is that it's set entirely behind the home. So I think you summed it up pretty well from
Get there.
where I'm sitting.
Any other commissioners have questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? None. Do we have a motion on this particular project? I think one of the conditions was that it be painted. I'm definitely in support of that. If we could move it to the further back area, if you're good with that. I would
Yes.
like to kind of push it in that direction if that's possible. Katie, is there anything else that we need to make sure we discuss on this particular item?
I think those were the only 2 issues, were the painting and then specifying the location.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve case HPCA 072 with the specific findings and conditions as stated in the staff report.
Do we have a second? Does anybody want to second that? Moved by Commissioner Remy, seconded by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, passed unanimously. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
had a question though, I guess.
Yes.
So does that mean it's approved for either location? You would recommend the further location and it must be painted one of the two colors that our house already is?
I would like it approved with the condition that it's behind the house and
Okay.
painted. But I don't
And
know,
painted,
I think,
okay.
does paint, is
But you
paint
can't require painting.
We can't
You can request.
request?
Well, I think we can require that it be painted, not stained. We can't
Or say
dictate
what
the color. So you can paint it whatever color you like, because we don't really review paint color on painted surfaces.
Go nuts.
And then the way the condition was worded, it would be, it specified the further back location that's entirely behind the house.
Okay,
So-
even regardless of when we do the fence, because that was one thing you and I talked about. If we did the closer one, we need to show that we're actually planning on building a fence in front of it.
Um,
And that was part of a way to keep it hidden.
We would have to see a submission for a fence too, though.
Yes, so, and I apologize, guys. We did the staff report and talked about the garage and the roof materials, and I added, so, hold on a second, let me scroll through here and see. We had a lot of cases this month, and so you had here listed and described and publicly noticed and listed in the agenda, items 1, 2, and 3, to install the paving and install the fencing in addition to the shed. Your recommended motion only lists item 1, but we had no conditions recommended associated with the paving or the fencing. We just needed a finalized site plan that had everything labeled with the measurements and the setbacks and all that were not fully described on the site plan as provided. So,
Okay.
so we
when
probably
build
need
a-
another motion for the
Okay.
fence and the paving. My apologies.
That's okay. Otherwise, I would have to come back. It expires after 1 year, correct? So if we don't build a fence within 1 year, I'll need to get it approved again?
Right.
Okay.
We can do an extension, a 6-month extension,
Okay,
and then we can do an extension on top of that.
okay.
But when we get toward the end of, toward the point where the CA is going to expire, you'll just want to check back in with staff on the status of it and if anything needs that extension.
Okay, okay, perfect.
Okay, so we need a motion now on items 2 and 3, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have a motion on those?
And Katie, that was to approve with the condition that a final site plan be submitted for staff approval?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm not certain I understand the motion for approval. Is the motion for approval to construct the feature located further south and tucked behind the house, or just tucked behind the house? I'm sorry, I'm just not clear.
Well, that's a good question, but the way that it is worded is that it is approved with the condition that it be set entirely behind the primary dwelling, and that a site plan be provided with complete with all dimensions and setbacks, be submitted to staff prior to release of the CA. So the motion that was approved doesn't state how far back, it just states that it has to be behind the dwelling.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
don't we have to rescind the last motion to approve the CA since we already voted to approve the CA?
We voted to approve item 1, even though that wasn't stated, because that's what's in the staff report. So now we need a motion to approve items 2 and 3, correct?
Is that what you're asking? Or are you thinking we need to re-motion the entire first with that
CA
clarified?
was approved, but it was only partially approved. So Rita, do we have to pull the CA back or just add to it?
I think you could do it either way. You could say, we did not take a vote on items 2 and 3, So you could take a vote on items 2 and 3, which would then become a part of the CA that's issued.
Okay. Would you like make a motion on items 2 and 3?
Steer me in the right direction if I go astray. I make a motion to approve items 2 and 3 of HPCA 22-00072 with the conditions that a final site plan be provided for approval or for staff approval prior to the release of a CA.
That sounds right to me.
A second.
Moved by Commissioner Remy, second by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that is passed as well, approved with conditions. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So once we decide where we, sorry, once we decide where we want it, we have to come back and say, this is where we're gonna put it, so you can officially approve 2 and 3, which is concrete and the fencing, correct?
So you won't have to come back here.
Oh, okay.
You have to take a final site plan
Okay,
that meets those conditions
Okay.
to staff,
Okay.
and they can approve it and give you the CA without having to come back.
okay. And then sometime within 10 days after that, it's official, and then we can start the construction.
So the approval, the appeal period is 10 business days from right now,
Oh.
whether you turn in your documentation or not. The
Okay.
clock starts ticking now.
Okay,
At the point that you turn in the additional documentation, the site plan and everything, that's when we would be able to issue the CA, assuming that as soon as the 10 days is up.
okay,
And I will just note that we have a site plan that shows the garage behind the house set back a certain distance. So that's, staff's understanding is that that's essentially what we're going to get, just further detailed with all the measurements and,
Yes.
and such. Okay.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4, HPCA 22-00077 at 2415 North Robinson.
This is located in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action by 2415, on application by 2415 Dream LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct multifamily units, elective, 2, install mechanical equipment, elective, 3, install driveway, elective, 4, install parking lot, elective, and 5, pave alley to acquire parking, elective. You have an item on your staff report that was not included on the agenda regarding a recommendation for parking minimums. This is in regard to the SPUD 1363 that the commission previously reviewed. Because that was not on the agenda, we can't take action on that particular recommendation at that time. We'll bring that back before the commission, and we'll just work with the applicant in the interim on what we need to do to make sure that doesn't hold them up, assuming that the rest of the items are approved today. The commission saw this proposal for an SPUD previously and recommended approval to allow for the construction of a multifamily apartment building on this site. That included requirements for lot coverage and setbacks and height and those types of things, all of which the proposal meets. Staff has recommended approval for the proposed structure. The only primary concern is that the HVAC, as shown, does not appear to be screened, or the screening has not been adequately documented, and it is set forward of where we would typically allow screening in the form of a fence. So those may need to be relocated or further detailed as to how they'll be screened.
Perfect, thank you. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Raj Ahmed, 1401 Classen Drive.
Awesome. So it sounds like per staff, primary concern is the screening of the HVAC units. What's the plan with those particular items?
I believe in the site plan we didn't address the fencing, so we're going to have fencing to the east, which is the front elevation, and the west. Also, the perimeter of the property will have fencing, which wasn't documented, and we can provide that, a new site plan with that.
Is that something that would have to come back before commission, or is that something that you guys could take on after the fact as well, Katie?
Staff can administratively approve fencing, but it would need to be set back 40% of the length of the side yard. And right now, the AC units are shown nearly at the front wall of the building. So we would not be able to administratively approve fencing that's that far forward on the side yard. Those would have to move back.
Okay, yeah, it's just the 2 units in the front, so we can move those back.
Okay.
That shouldn't be an issue.
So that is something that if they can put those in a location where the fencing is administratively approvable, that could be a condition of the approval, that the revised site plan showing the location of the AC and documenting the screening be submitted to staff.
Is there any issues with it, with bringing it back to that 40% mark?
I don't
that-
think so. It's
Okay.
not.
Well, just note or be aware that if I'm reading your floor plan correctly, is the front. It looks like you have 4 units that are going to be south of that 40% mark. Is the front porch that's central to the house is at the front, correct?
What was that?
The front of the house has the front porch that's central,
Yeah.
and the back has the offset. So you've got 3 pairs of condensing units. The first 2 sets are south of that 40% line. So you're going to have to move 2 sets farther back.
I think they're actually east. This runs east-west.
Okay.
They're on the south side of the building.
They're
So I
east.
understand what you're saying, but they're east of the 40% mark. They're
Yeah,
forward
yeah,
of the
yeah,
40% mark.
Does that make sense? So just being aware that you're moving more than just 2, and you're moving them more than almost halfway back of the structure, which is going to extend your runs.
Bill Perry, I'm the designer. Question, could we do some screening instead? If we move them back behind the unit next door? Or is screening going to follow the same guidelines as far as the fencing? Because getting a Freon line that far up in the 2nd story is a long ways.
Let me just pull up what the landscape screening is allowed, and the guidelines actually state is preferred. We know sometimes that can be hard to establish and maintain, so we would just want to ensure that it's going to be a durable landscape material that is truly going to screen the units.
Okay.
But landscaping would be allowed forward of that 40% mark.
So he could fence back the 40% and then landscape that front portion with screening and whatever type of.
I believe that would meet the letter of the guidelines. I think
Okay.
if you could get them farther back from the front wall and thereby farther back from the front wall of your neighbor as well, I think that would be
I think we could
more
do that
appropriate.
without problem. Okay, all right, thank you.
I don't look at this and immediately think that it is consistent with the historic nature of the surrounding homes, multifamily or single family. It just doesn't really feel harmonious to me. And just pulling directly from the staff report, I know staff is recommending approval with agreed upon conditions, to be worked out with you all after the approval. But just to quote, it says some architectural details remain inconsistent or poorly defined, including the brick band that does not continue at the front elevation and the relationship of the siding in the front gable and the 2nd story to the abutting brick pilasters. The pilasters are not illustrated, et cetera, et cetera. That feels like a lot to me to go ahead and approve and hope it gets worked out. We have some other cases on the docket today that I think are asking for less after the fact and have been recommended for a continuance. That just to me feels like a bridge too far to work out after the fact.
I think the things noted in the staff report, like the brick not being the brick band not being consistent, that just we've been working with staff and with the city for the SPUD initially, and then working with staff for, I would say, like it's been quite some time. We've been going back and forth, so we've revised this and gone into a lot of detail in trying to make it consistent with the streetscape. It just got missed. So that's something, in my opinion, that's something minor. That's not drawn on the elevation. We do plan on doing that, you know, which was noted in the staff report, the brick band that goes, and also the pilasters that were not shown on the floor plan. They just got missed. Those are two mistakes, of drawing mistakes for us.
I mean, Katie, in looking at the proposed street view, I mean, it just doesn't look, I mean, the windows are not remotely the same proportion. The door is dissimilar, the little side, like it just doesn't, to me, it is just, not that it's a poor design, but if we're talking about one of the main criteria being that it is harmonious with historic structures around it, it just, to me, is not reading that way. And maybe I'm alone in that, but there seem to be a lot of discrepancies between proportions and materials that we ordinarily approve and recommend and what is proposed here, especially with something still seemingly needing to be worked out.
So if it goes to staff and they're uncomfortable with the materials, design, whatever the case would be, does that mean it comes back before us again, or how does that work, Katie?
So if, and I'm sorry, I should have called those items out when I was summarizing staff's recommendation. We had a very broad condition there noting some of the issues with the design details, but I should have highlighted those. If it's something as simple as we want the brick band to continue all the way around the front elevation, or we want further details of the interaction of the pilasters with the siding, those are things that I think can absolutely be just submitted to staff and we confirm that that's all done correctly. If there are more significant design changes that members of the commission want to see, if you feel like we're not there yet with the design of the proposed structure, then that's something that would need to come back. I think that's too discretionary to just be left to us to evaluate whether or not they've hit the mark.
I don't know, it seems to outline several things to me, you know, the pilasters, the brick band, the setbacks, and I mean, just looking at the 6/6 windows on the front, the scale of those feels really off to me in a historic neighborhood. It feels very current, which is not really the goal in a street-facing facade. Same with the 6-panel door, feels, you know, with the transoms on each side, feels extremely current to me. But, I mean, if I'm alone in that, I will sit back. But I just feel like, for me, it still has a ways to go.
Let's check and see if there's any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project too, so we can get their opinion and feedback. Anybody that wishes to speak on this particular item? Okay, that makes it a little easier for us too. Any other comments, questions from commissioners? I guess the design doesn't really, it doesn't, sorry, I'm looking over here now.
I mean, so that's...
Yeah. I don't have, I guess I don't have issue with the design, but that's fine too. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this one?
Are those windows something staff would recommend on the front of a home, a single family in any of these neighborhoods? You know, if I want to stick them on my house tomorrow, is that fine?
Well, I think the way that they are shown in the elevation drawing doesn't have the full level of detail that, you know, you're not seeing in the elevation drawing that there's a meeting rail on the windows. You're not seeing the full
Where would
dimension.
we see that?
That would be in, you know, in the middle of the window where it.
No, I mean, is it in this packet?
Oh,
somewhere
yes,
where
so
we
they
can
do
see
have
it?
their window specifications for the actual window product that they would be.
But that is something that we would typically recommend approval on, you know, if
I
somebody
mean-
does a bungalow over there and they want to replace all the windows.
If it's a, I mean, we see hung, you know, single or double hung 6/6 windows all the time, and it's, I think it's an aluminum clad wood
I guess-
product.
These are Pella windows, and we've gotten approval for them.
I mean, I'm sure it's not the quality
numerous
that I'm concerned
times
about.
Before, so.
Well, and make sure you're looking, so there's a discrepancy between the street view and the front elevation.
Yeah, that was actually
so
my next question.
just make sure you're
What's the-
looking at the right door.
What is so the door, yeah, I'm seeing it circled here on page 13. What's the reason for the discrepancies between, just it's hard to sit back and judge when we're looking at a streetscape and a facade, whatever, is that a west-facing elevation? Like, it's just hard to discern what this is actually going to look like because what's been provided to us is not, we're having to piece it together ourselves. Like I'm sitting here flipping back to be like, okay, envision that door on the front of this home, change those windows, this, that, and the other. It just, to me, feels like a lot to approve and hope for the best. So is there any way, has staff seen a realistic facade using the pieces that are actually going to be at play?
I have not seen anything that you don't have in front of you. I think we often get elevation drawings that give the proper size of a window opening, but do not fully document every detail of the window, and then you have to reference the window documentation that's submitted, just based on the scale of what they're drawing. When you're showing the front elevation of a fairly large two-story building, just the level of detail with which the windows are represented. Although we do sometimes get more thorough drawings of window details provided, showing like a section through the window, that sort of thing.
The reason the streetscape and the front elevation is not consistent is because it just got missed on our end. Streetscape, that's what our but one of our elevations was. And going through with staff recommended that we change something that was a little bit more
And
consistent.
I'm going to admit that I'm confused. What are we referring to when we're talking about the streetscape?
Well, that was
versus
actually
the-
my next point. There are two different facades shown, and unless I'm misreading this, let's see, are both of these front facades, okay, the street front view being the first one, that is also the east elevation, correct?
Yes, that's
okay, so
correct.
the doors are different in each of those, and they are both different from the door that has apparently been chosen. So there's 3 doors we're looking at here. And I understand the one that's circled is the one that's chosen, but it's just not representative. Like, it's just hard to tell what we are approving and what we're hoping gets done.
The door that is
Tell me what page in the
circled,
packet.
the door that is
Yeah, we're in the
circled,
attachment, page 6, page 3, and
there's multiple
there's
doors.
multiple.
There's multiple doors, so the door that's circled in the packet, that's actually for not the east or front elevation. That would be the doors for the west and
So
north elevation.
what is chosen for the front elevation then?
What is drawn out on the east elevation?
So not the first facade, but the second facade.
What do you mean by not the
So
first?
there's 2,
Yeah, so the first page, which says street front view
Yes.
comparison.
so
Like I
ignore
said,
that
that's a
door.
mistake, the reason that happened is we changed everything, so everything got changed except for the street front view comparison, which the elevation was not changed.
So, yeah, to clarify, the street front view, and we probably could have had the applicant provide a much less detailed drawing of the building on that. That is really intended just as a comparison to the surrounding
height,
structure
yeah.
so that you can get a sense of the width, the height, the roof form. And they did that earlier on and then
Earlier,
made
yes,
several
that's
additional
correct.
changes to the design that didn't get carried over into that elevation. So sorry, I was having trouble following which drawings you were
That's
comparing.
the point. It
So,
is hard
yeah,
to follow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not there, but
You're not there for approval?
I'm not
Okay.
personally. I think there's too much that needs to, for me, there's too much that needs to, if it's not a case where it needs to be changed, then it needs to be clarified where we can appropriately see what's really going in. It's a fairly prominent location, highly visible from a lot of different places, and I don't feel comfortable winging it.
Okay, so so if we were going to do a continuance, more detailed information with the specific doors and materials and look of the
I would,
project?
and just also, I mean, if we're continuing it, I would ask that, the findings and conditions that are already referenced would come back taken care of. So we're not in this position again at the next meeting to say like, we're close to an approval, but we want this addressed.
I have a question. I don't understand what additional details. I do agree, we've made some mistakes on the drawings, but those, like Katie said, for example, the street comparison front view, the purpose of that, you know, it could be just a, you know, basic drawing. It's not to look at the architectural details. You have to look at the east elevation, which we have gone extensively, if you look at what we started off with to where we're at now. I don't know what additional details, when you say provide additional details on the doors.
Well, I think that's a good question.
Provided enough, Angela or Katie could, you know, it's in the packet.
Is the front door in this packet outside of just the east elevation?
I do not know.
Okay.
But I do understand your concerns, and Raj and I have worked together extensively previously. If you are in a position where you feel like the elevation drawings are not representative of what is going to be constructed there, or if you're in a position where you feel that the construction drawings are not representative of what should be constructed there, you have every opportunity to continue this project. And staff can work with the applicant towards whatever it is that you believe is necessary.
So my opinion, I guess where I would be leaning would be an approval with the conditions that all of these detailed design items be worked out with staff, and because they're going to make sure that everything is approved and appropriate and the right door in the right place and all that good stuff too. I certainly see your point. I mean, there's the side doors circled, but there's not a front door circled on this drawing.
To me, the whole thing feels a little out of sync with what's surrounding it. But you know, I think I may be alone in that.
I don't think you're alone in that, and I think I did not state myself well at all. You can continue it to come back to you, and staff will work with them to get for you whatever you believe is necessary.
Well, I certainly don't want to motion for a continuance if not everybody is
Where's everybody else? Where?
I have a quick question. So on page 13, you have that one door circled, which is, it's a 3/2 with the bottom wood. So where is that door going?
So those are the doors proposed for the west elevation. Also so we have a total of, we have the front door in the east elevation, then on the north elevation, we have 2 exterior doors, and then if you look in the west elevation, we have another exterior door. So for those 3 exterior doors.
Page 13.
Page 13, yes.
Okay, and then so for the east elevation, the reference to the door is the second drawing page that you have?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have an actual cut sheet on the front door?
No, we don't.
Okay.
So, again, this is the first time I'm seeing the case, so I'm trying to synthesize some of the sentiments that are being stated. I've been in your spot, so I empathize with you all in the process. A lot of times when you're in your seat, you're hearing things and you're trying to interpret, okay, well, what does that mean? So I think what I see when I look at it is I want to make the distinction between new construction and renovation. So I think you have a leniency to do something different, and the guidelines support that. There's 2 different sets of guidelines based on new construction or renovation. So I think you have some flexibility there. I think what I'm hearing fellow commissioners say is when you look at the compatibility and the context, the things that I think the commission is looking at is the massing, the bulk. So the street view, I think, does a really nice job. What's that?
The bulk, yeah.
Yeah. So the bulk and the massing and how the building sits in elevation with the other buildings, I think you guys have demonstrated that it fits appropriately. Some of the things that maybe don't quite fit, and if it sounds like we may be heading towards a continuance, so some things to maybe explore and see if it's within the realm or reason. Again, I know you're already a long ways on this journey, so I hate to do too many curveballs, but I would look at some of the other buildings on the street and look at percentage of glazing to masonry. So this seems pretty heavy to me, just looking at it for the first time. And then it seems like, and again, this is just my opinion, some of the pilaster and the dormers and the shed are kind of nostalgic nods that you've added to maybe appease. I don't know that you need to do that. I think just getting some of the architectural content more simple maybe. So like if you look at a lot of the buildings around there, the entrance is kind of the prominent thing. And what you've done is you've put siding on there, which is usually a less expensive material, and you've pushed it back, which makes it less prominent, and kind of framed it with these pilasters. So I think there's some things that you could study that aren't significant alterations that maybe might capture some of the contextual nature that lets it fit in but doesn't have to match. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is, but you know, when we initially brought this up to staff, we were listening to exactly, you know, similar things of the entrance not being predominant, and Katie knows, Angela too, that we've, you know, we made a point to make the entrance much more, you know, noticeable or predominant than what it was. As long as, you know, masonry materials, exterior facade, you know, it's, you know, brick, you know, throughout that street. So I don't know.
They all look pretty, I mean, if you look at this the windows wall ratio photograph we have on the screen, everything looks pretty heavy masonry. I mean,
Yeah,
if you
it is.
Go back to the next one, right there, you got one that's
Yeah,
kind of designed
all
similar.
both of them throughout the whole street on that.
I kind of think that the house in terms of its size, or the complex in terms of its size and massing and everything fit. Just based off, you know, what you see to the left of that, because that one's pretty small right there, that white one.
Yeah, if you look on what's on 23rd.
You think the white one, the stucco one on the screen is small?
I think it looks small compared to the ones that are next to it. It's almost like
But look how many windows it has for
a lot
such
of
a small
windows.
property.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I did notice. And this is, you know, the window placement on the I don't know which elevations they are. It feels like it's lacking in terms of the number of windows that are on this particular complex. But in terms of the size and its, I guess, how it relates to others on the street, to me, it looks like it'll probably fit there pretty well.
Now, if you're talking specifically about this white one, it has very recently had extensive changes made to it that have not yet been addressed.
Oh, wonderful. Can't wait to see that one.
You'll notice new windows, a flat roof, that sort of thing. So, although the window openings are indicative of the historic conditions, so your wall-to-window ratios there are good.
Yeah. Just my opinion on the size of it.
Yeah,
size
and I trust and we lean on staff's recommendations a lot. And again, I haven't walked to the street specifically. I was just trying to offer some
That's all right.
helpful information.
You know, I do agree that we, maybe this was, you know, one of the cases that we've gone through so many elevations. And so, you know, like a window or a door not being the same with, you know, the first page of the street front view compared to the last. But by no means does that, you know, take away from, you know, anything that we've done to this point or tried to, you know, make it compatible with the massing, the window placement, the front, making it more, you know, predominant. We've, you know, like you said, we take staff's recommendations really seriously, and that's who we deal with day to day. And me personally, I deal with them a lot, so I know, I try to emphasize that and, you know, make it.
Personally, I don't have an issue with the discrepancies, or I can sort of figure out what's going on. It's just if staff's clear and it meets the guidelines, then.
I just wanted to say that this is the first time that you all have seen this. I know you missed a couple meetings, so if you thought, so this is the first time this has been before the commission. We have been working with the applicant, starting with the SPOD coming through the process, and then with the first submittal that was dramatically different from what you see before you. And I feel like they have come a long way with giving more prominence and more weight to the entrance, adding more architectural details throughout the building. I certainly hear the commission's concerns about window-to-wall ratio and proportions and materials. That's something that is always a challenge when we have new construction. So, I was at a point where I was comfortable recommending approval with conditions, but it's obviously the commission's purview and to ask for more or to identify additional things that need to be revised even further. And as he said, this is a really prominent location. This is a large structure. So we want to get it right. And I know that the applicant wants to get it right too, so.
The fact that whatever did we miss on the SPUD recommendation, I mean, does that mean it's going to require a continuance on that anyways?
So we would just put that back on as a separate item if
Okay.
everything else was approved.
Okay. No, that,
Can you clarify what that spot, you said it was to do with the parking, the amount of parking spaces required?
Yes, so typically, well, when you do a SPUD, you identify everything about whatever your existing zoning is that you want to change, and it didn't call out anything about parking, so that reverts back to whatever the underlying base zoning parking requirement is. They had intended to actually reduce the parking minimums slightly. It was shown that way on the site plan, but that language wasn't included in the SPUD document. So subdivision and zoning staff is comfortable doing that as an administrative amendment to the SPUD, but that is supposed to come through HP Commission for recommendation.
Okay.
So I don't know that we've ever done that in the time that I've been here, so.
It's been approved already.
They signed off on it, but wanted it to still come to us for a final, So I don't think it will hold you up. We just need to get a formal recommendation from HP.
Have we already asked if there's any comments from citizens?
We did.
Or do we have any notes from the neighborhood association on this item?
We did not get any written comments or any emails on this one, and I don't know if anyone was in attendance that wanted to speak on this item.
we asked earlier and nobody stood up and raised their hand, so. Well, I can certainly support a motion to approve based off staff recommendations and some of the things we've heard from the applicant today.
I move approval based on the staff's recommendations. HPCA 2200077.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Just to confirm, that's staff recommendation with conditions as noted. Okay.
Including the screening. Is that all? That all's in there? Is that right? Screening or movement of HVAC.
Yeah, that the designer agreed to.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Oh, there we go, already up there. It was approved 4-1. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to item number 5, HPCA 2200106 at 614 Northwest 18th Street.
This is located in Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by John Beeden, Behold Inc., for Kimberly Carlson for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove metal siding from dwelling to expose and repair historic siding and trim, elective. 2, replace columns and railing at front porch, elective. 3, demolish addition at rear dwelling, elective. 4, construct 2-story addition at rear dwelling. 5, construct back porch and deck, elective. 6, demolish existing non-historic garage apartment and carport, elective. 7, construct 2-story garage, elective. 8, install paving at alley and parking space west of proposed garage, elective. And 9, install sidewalk between house and garage, elective. This is the first time that this item has been heard by the commission. You all did receive an email after the packet went out with additional documentation that included further details, dimensions, et cetera, beyond what had been included in the staff report previously. We had some errors in what was initially attached to the staff report. So those new materials that were sent out via email are not addressed in the staff report and have not been reviewed by staff at this time, but the applicant did ask that we forward those on to the commission so that you would at least have the opportunity to review them if that was feasible. At this, staff did recommend approval of items 1 and 2, approval of the demolition of the garage and carport, and continuance of items 4 and 5, continuance of items 7, 8, and 9, and that's everything.
Okay, big project. Let's see. Talk to us about what you submitted. I want to say a couple nights ago, and what was submitted a couple nights ago. We've had a little bit of time to review that, but what was new in that
Sure.
wasn't in the staff report previously?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. First, state your name and address for the record. I forgot that part.
John Beeden, 1135 Northwest 39th Street.
And then of the information that was submitted recently, what was new, what changed from the first time information was submitted to staff to what was submitted as of late? We haven't had a ton of time to interact with that.
Was it that something else was submitted or that it didn't make it into the packet?
Oh, that's a
It
good
was-
question.
Talking with staff, we'd come up with that there was some additional information that would probably be,
Okay. including
like lot coverage, existing and then new. There were, and then I didn't see if the, what was added to was I had done some scaling of the garages in the alley there to make sure if it was consistent with what we saw in the Sanborn map for the recommended size of the expansion of the footprint of the garage.
So what was added to your packet was in fact very similar to what was initially in your packet, but includes dimensions. Additional materials have been submitted to staff as well, but what you have received are elevation drawings and that sort of thing that include dimensions that were not included the first time. And that was my fault. I did not get those in there for you. So where I have said in the staff report that the structure is 24 feet tall, that is not accurate. It is actually 21 feet tall and some inches. He did go further prior to writing of the staff report to check the dimensions of other garages on the alley to see if his proportions were very similar, and they are very similar. There is proposed a garage that will be directly across the alley that's 2-story, and I think I did mention that for you. It has not been built, but it is in fact proposed and approved. So those are types of things that should have been included for you as far as dimensions on your elevations, and I failed there.
To the, let's see, to the east, the immediate east, there is a 2-story garage as well, correct?
It's not 2-story.
Not,
It is a large footprint and a high pitch, so
Okay.
it probably is taller or as tall as what we are proposing as well.
Okay.
The one that is
For visual purposes, there is
Sure.
a 2-story garage next to the east.
correct.
It is very tall.
Okay.
It does, excuse me, it does have a loft. Am I right? That,
Yeah,
So-
it's like 1.5 stories.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, my question, well, I had a couple, but one of them was, I just want to make sure I'm understanding because of the additional supplements that were provided. So if everything were approved today and completed, the lot coverage would decrease from 65% to 59%?
Correct.
Okay. It's a big win for me.
Sure.
And then is there,
There is also room to move around a little bit too, like if the sidewalk between the house and the garage, if that was something that, you know, got us closer to that 50% or whatever. I mean,
That was
there-
actually my next question, just because I apologize. I actually just completely missed that item, that there was a sidewalk, but noticed it in the staff recommendations. So do you know how many feet that accounts for, the sidewalk between the house and the garage?
I do not.
Since you brought it up, that they would potentially be open to removing that or changing it, it feels like that's a really easy way to move away from one of the things that was being contested in the staff recommendations.
And then we have, it looks like item number 12, specific findings, says the expansion paving beyond the width of the garage is not consistent with criteria for driveways and parking. Is that going to be made out of gravel? What's the?
Yes, that would be, I would recommend, we haven't discussed it actually with the owner yet about what that product would be, but decomposing granite, something that is permeable, but also hard enough pack to drive on. There are other options, you know, the graded material that you could actually grow grass on, such things. That doesn't really work between the alley and the garage, but on the parking spot it would. So,
Katie, can you, because there are a couple of those on the docket for today, can you clarify what the guidelines say about gravel for parking?
The guidelines generally say that concrete is generally the historic material, unless we have evidence that another material was used historically. The guidelines do support the use of permeable materials for things like parking surfaces, which gravel is technically a permeable material, but I think in general gravel has been seen as problematic for all the issues that it's problematic citywide, that it's hard to contain. You know, it ends up spreading out into the yard, out into the street, that sort of thing. And then as far as actual just city requirements for parking, my understanding is that you can only park on a gravel surface when that's existing non-conforming condition. The only time you can add new gravel parking is in very limited conditions, like when there's no way to get a vehicle into the backyard and you have to expand a driveway to accommodate a spot in the front yard, and that's described in the code. I don't think we included all of that language in this staff report, but.
So maybe, could you walk us through the motivation for using the gravel since it is in conflict with the guidelines?
well, the existing concrete is, well, we were trying to reduce the
Okay,
lot coverage,
Okay.
basically, yeah.
Got it.
I mean, trying to meet that requirement.
can we trade you the sidewalk for the gravel?
Sure. We are amenable to whatever changes would make it fit the guidelines.
Those were really my only questions after. I did have more questions before we received the updated information. I thought all in all it was a very thorough submission, which was really nice. I was sold at the lot coverage. No, I'm kidding.
Is there anything in there's several approvals that were recommended, there's a couple of continuances. Is there anything from the commission's perspective that we would need to address with him on the continuance, or can we push towards an approval? Is that at all possible today?
I don't have an issue with, I mean, the sidewalk was sort of an issue for me, but if that's, if y'all are open to, just to, you know, kind of get away from so much concrete, that was my issue in my little notepad.
Okay. Anything else from this side?
Sounds like they're working.
Okay. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project, or anyone from the neighborhood that wishes to speak? Do you want to say anything? Okay. I can certainly support an approval. Sounds like staff is working closely with the applicant and the builder/designer. Sounds like they're providing the information that is necessary. To me, everything looks in pretty good order. I don't know that I have anything necessarily that I would have issue with.
Is there anything, so staff is recommended to continue several. Are there conditions that need to be associated with those continuances? Or to avoid a continuance, is there?
So it looks like part of the continuance on constructing the two-story garage, that was one of the continuances, but it looks like they've reduced the size of it, and there's several in the area that have two-story garages. Angela, Katie, anything from your all's perspective that we would want to?
Well, I have
dig
a
into?
question for you, since we've been talking about the gravel and the parking.
Yes?
The standards and guidelines indicate that driveways can be as wide as the driveway door.
Okay.
Typically, I often see driveways approved at the width of the entire garage. At this time, this is a proposal for a driveway that expands beyond the width of the garage to include additional parking at the alley. Are you in fact comfortable with that?
Talk to us about
And
the
if so,
yeah.
is it because it's at the alley rather than a street?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
So this is a shared driveway, correct?
Yes.
Is that, yeah, I guess walk us through why the extra parking is needed. Is it because of the shared driveway, you can't go
Correct.
north-south?
Correct.
Certainly a unique circumstance.
I mean, I generally don't have a lot of issues with things in the alleys, but
I mean,
I will mention too that in the proposal, you can see that we intend to build or proposed that we are moving the south elevation of the garage 3 feet into the property for access both in and out of the garage, and of course that helps widen the alley at that point as well. Still not as far back as the one to the east. Yeah, there isn't a garage to the west.
is there in this packet an elevation that shows what we're talking about from the alley? Oh, I see.
Yeah, the south elevation of the garage.
I gotcha.
Yes, yeah.
how necessary is the extension on the driveway for you guys? How necessary is the extension on the driveway for you guys? Part of me wonders.
You're talking about the parking space on
Yes.
the west elevation?
That is, to me, I wonder if we might need a continuance to look and see if that's appropriate. The materials certainly are not quite what is typically used in that type of scenario, but if you go with concrete, then you've got more impermeable lot coverage. So I think it might be important for you guys to determine what you want there, whether it's the extended driveway with concrete or in a continuance potentially, or not extending it and going with just a kind of a standard approach to a driveway and getting it approved today. Does either one of those?
Is there another option in that? What if the driveway, or that really the parking spot is really what it is, were two narrower strips of concrete that would meet and then have permeable grass in between them?
I don't recall ever approving something similar to this. I mean, I'm relatively new here, but basically a third parking space outside of the garage. Katie, is there any precedent for that outside of just like what we're looking at in terms of how much concrete as it relates to the property?
And Mike?
I think we typically see, what we've typically seen is just simply a driveway widening within the backyard as it approaches a garage. I can't say that I can recall seeing the installation of an additional parking space from the alley at the back of the garage, but as you said, it's going to be
Sure.
particularly visible.
To be sure, too, right now, it is a parking place,
Sure.
right? I mean, that concrete runs the full width from the west side of the garage to the fence line. I think there might be 2 feet short, basically to accommodate that tree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's currently there? I'm sorry.
It's currently concrete.
Oh.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna, David Carlson, a homeowner. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Currently, it's blocking by the tree, but there is a very long concrete pad that I think prior to us buying the house was used for parking. Now, we've since gated that off and we use it as a basketball.
For
court,
sure it
but
was,
it is
for sure it
existing.
was used as a parking place at some point. I mean, even the house itself had been cut into a few units. The garage is not a garage right now, it is a apartment.
The shared driveway is a unique enough circumstance for me to potentially approve the parking space. My big fear is setting precedents, and what does that do to us going forward with others that may
Yeah.
want an additional parking space at their residence as well?
I mean, those are my only two, the sidewalk and that were my only two flags on the, well, I actually wasn't reading it that way, but was reading just as a bigger apron approach to the garage.
And this is a reduction in concrete across the board for this site, 100%. They do not have a driveway per se at this area at the entrance to the garage that will allow them to park more than 2 structures in the garage. So you do have unique circumstances, both in that it's a huge reduction in concrete and that there is limited parking.
Would it remain fenced? You said it's currently fenced. Would it remain fenced? You know, like if you're sitting out you're sitting on your back deck or whatever, and you're looking out towards the alley, is it reading as being related to the alley or to the backyard?
What we have proposed in the drawing, the fence is between that parking space and the house. What exists is the fence runs across the back or the south elevation of the garage to the other side of the yard. So right now, you would have to open the gate to park on that concrete. I believe there's a picture. Nope.
I would almost prefer it be concrete than the crushed gravel, too.
I would too, especially if it's fenced.
So would we. We were trying to meet the to shrink the right.
Right, yeah. Concrete is preferred.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, as long as it was fenced and seemed to relate more to the alley and, you know, a back driveway than to the yard, that's,
When you say fenced, do you mean fenced as we have it proposed, or fenced as it is, where the fence runs along the alley?
I mean, I'm talking about fencing from the yard to the
Okay.
alley,
Okay.
so,
Correct. Okay.
okay.
Understood, I should say.
I think I can support an approval with some conditions. You know,
Anybody else? What are our conditions? I'm lost. Our conditions are that the parking space is to be concrete, to remove so would we just only approve, was it item 9 that is the sidewalk? Would we approve everything but item 9, or would we state that as a condition that it's going to be a permeable surface?
I think you could approve item 9 with the condition that it be a permeable material, and then if they choose to, and that be submitted to staff.
So would the motion be with just blanket agreed upon conditions, or do we want to list those out?
It's helpful for us if you can list
Okay,
out
so
what you're looking for.
We're saying one agreed upon condition is that the parking space is concrete. The sidewalk, how would you like that worded, Katie, with the sidewalk?
That the sidewalk between the house and garage be a permeable material to be submitted to staff.
Sorry, I'm taking notes. Okay, and then everything else is included in the specific finding. Do we need to give a unique circumstance to the parking pad?
I would. That is a single driveway.
Do we need to spell that out, that what the unique circumstance is?
Do we need to spell that out typically? Yeah.
Yes, typically we state what that
So
is.
the shared driveway with alley access?
Yeah.
Okay, what else, guys?
I think that's it. And that the that the information and elevations that were
I was like,
submitted-
elevator.
Yeah, the information and elevations that were submitted, or that were referred to commission, later be adopted and utilized.
I'm having difficulty hearing.
I was just saying that the different elevations that you all sent over, that those be included and utilized in the findings going forward. Sure.
So most recent
Drawings.
exterior submissions be used moving forward with
Yeah.
staff approvals?
Because that takes care of the height of the garage and some other things that were at issue previously.
I think you could say be used in the certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. Okay. I don't even know how many items there are. Hang on. Items 1 through 13, correct?
It is items 1 through 9 in the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at a list of findings. Hang on, let me find my place. Okay. I move to approve items 1 through 9 of HPCA 22-00106 with the specific findings and agreed upon conditions referenced in the staff report with the addition of the unique circumstance created by the shared driveway and alley access as relevant to the additional parking pad, with the additional agreed upon condition that the parking pad will be concrete and that in item number 9, the proposed sidewalk will be a permeable surface submitted to staff, and that the most recent exterior submissions be used moving forward with regard to this CA.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that was passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, HPCA 22-00107 at 2416 North Robinson.
This is located in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Tom Spector for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install 2 signs elective. This is to replace an existing sign and add an additional sign, and is well within what the guidelines allow. Other than that, our guidelines say that you should typically have 1 sign. I believe our guidelines don't really anticipate a commercial building of this scale with multiple tenants and multiple needs for signs. The proposed signs appear to meet all applicable guidelines and regulations. We recommended approval just with the condition that we verify with the applicant total square footage of existing signage already on the building. I believe they're well under what's allowed in this area, but we just need to confirm that as part of the CA.
Do you have those calculations with you? Oh, I'm sorry. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Tom Spector, 4720 North Harvey Parkway.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have those calculations with you, or have you figured
I
what?
don't have those calculations with me.
But we can.
We previously, when I say previously, I think I mean 2018, approved the awning, under the awning signs, a series of 5 of them. They're 18 inches by 6 foot long, and there are 5 of those, so could do that math, but that's the extent of the signage, except for of course, the existing one up on the chimney element that is dimensioned on the drawings there.
And I think I'm comfortable with that being a submit to staff as a condition of the approval. I don't think we have to bust out the calculator in the meeting to verify. I think they're well under the what's allowed.
Okay. Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
Can I
Do we have
move
any questions?
approval?
Other questions Motion for approval?
Yeah, can I move approval of HPCA-22-00107? Item 1, the installation of 2 signs with the specific findings and conditions as noted in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner moved by Commissioner Milner, seconded by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. All right, signs are approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Moving on to item number 7, HPCA 22-00109 at 608 Northwest 41st Street.
This is located in Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, HJH Design, for Ryan Vincent for certificate of appropriateness to 4 construct garage elective and 5 install driveway elective. This is the first time the commission has seen this application. The garage meets applicable guidelines for the design, the materials, the placement of the garage. It is over the threshold of what the guidelines establish for appropriate garage size. There was a previously existing garage that's larger than what was allowed. This is slightly larger than the previously existing structure. There's also some design elements of the previously existing garage that could probably be further incorporated into the proposed design. So we did recommend continuance on the garage for those reasons. And then the driveway is proposed to go back at a similarly kind of wide approach that tapers down with the intent to replace the garage, and as a separate item on this application that's not yet before you, to redo the paving in the front yard. Staff felt that it might be more appropriate to further reduce the width of the driveway approach to be a more typical condition that's uniform, all the way up the yard. So recommended continuance on both of those items.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Holly Hunt, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. What you're seeing, just wanted to clarify a few things right off the bat. We did look at the precedence of the historic garage that was previously removed, and it was 22 feet by 29 feet. So if you multiply that, it's 638. That's exactly the square footage we matched in this proposal. Also, if you'll look on the floor plan, I just wanted you to notice, 22 by 20 feet of that will be garage space, equaling 440 square feet. And then there's a storage area in the back. We're installing a wall. It'll be separate, but that'll be, again, to alleviate any need for a shed or anything like that. This is lawn equipment, so on. It's pretty typical in the area for there to be like a storage area off of the 2-car garage, as well as servants' quarters or something like that, maybe the driver's quarters. So we feel like it's a really typical condition for there to be additional square footage on the garage, but not necessarily included in the parking square footage of the garage structure itself. So again, just trying to match that historic square footage. That's what we're showing you. And then another thing that Miles and Zeb with Revive, who are doing the work, wanted me to bring up was that they're working with, and I'll forget the company's name, but a landscape designer, Brent Wall, to do a full rehaul of the front yard. Included in my site plan, it mentions remediating that parking that's existing in the front yard. They want to remove all that paving and remediate back to soil. There's definitely going to have to be some tiering because there's a bit of a grade change, but that's all going to happen with landscaping. There is no more proposed parking or paving in the front. And so I think in this application, until we've seen those plans, we're just kind of not addressing the curb cut, kind of just leaving that existing to be so that we can get the garage approved. The garage, once that construction is, identified and begun, we can determine the elevation of the driveway paving, and that will help us determine, all of that will happen at the same time that the landscape plan comes through. And I think they've mentioned that to Katie as well. So we really hope that you guys can see this as a very within guidelines garage. By the way, we had not seen that picture of the previous garage. I guess I missed that on the assessor website. So if the commission feels like a clipped gable would make sense, we're certainly amenable to that. We felt like the straight-on gable matched the neighbor's garage condition, as well as do you all have Betsy's letter? So the images that she gave, there's one of an existing, a different configuration of an existing garage. Back before Betsy did her went from a one car to a two car. You'll see it, it's like on the bottom of the page. So to me, that garage looks like, one, it's a double door, but also I don't see the clipped gable on that one. But again, we were just thinking that to do the gable end, it not only matched the front gable of the house, but it also matched Betsy's roof line. But it's neither here nor there, I think, for the homeowner. If a clipped gable is what it takes to get it approved today, we're happy to make that compromise. So just happy to hear some feedback and let us know what we need to do, and hope to get this approved so they can go in.
You know me, I always struggle with the garage that's bigger than normal, but how far outside of the threshold are we on this one?
So I just took a look, because 21 by 29 is what the historic garage was, but that equals 609, not 638, when you multiply.
I could have sworn that the picture on the assessor said 22 by 29.
But
But if that's what it is, we're fine with that. In fact, what we would rather do is lose that 20 square feet off of the back storage area, maintain the 440, in other words, in the front, and then just reduce that rear area to, I guess it'd be 178 instead of 198. So we could reduce a foot, I get, whatever that would be, square footage, I can get it exact.
So I mean, they are, whatever that math is, roughly 30 square feet over the size of the historic garage, which was 609. So the guidelines allow you to go back with whatever the size of the historic garage was. So they're well over 450 square feet, which is kind of our baseline, but that's aside from what the historic garage was, which it sounds like they're willing to revise that to match the historic footprint.
Sounds like we just didn't see the same historic documentation. And
yeah.
We're fine with it. They want a two-car garage back basically where there used to be one. So I think, 30 square feet is not a deal breaker whatsoever.
Do you want that separation wall in the garage?
Well, the idea here is just so, we don't have to have additional shed structures in the back or anything like that.
No,
just lawn equipment, things like that.
I guess what I'm saying from my perspective, what we care about is what it looks like from the outside. So whether that wall's there or not is inconsequential to our purview. If you're doing it because you want it functionally, great. But if you're fitting the guidelines to put it back in the existing footprint, I don't think it's necessary.
Well, if your fellow commissioners agreed, that's fine with us. Our whole thinking is just, I've been in enough of these meetings to know that you guys are sticklers about this 450. It's like the golden rectangle of this commission. So if you say 450, I'm going to make sure that I don't exceed
Yeah, I think the 609 is the new standard for this one.
For this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with the 609, or to be honest, the 638. I think you're really splitting hairs when you get down to that 1 foot. But just because of what was there previously, I don't disagree with you about the dormer. I think that while not historic, the garage y'all proposed looks to be more harmonious with what's next to it. So I'm certainly not offended by that change. I was a little bit confused though, Katie, with what you were, I was trying to pull up the site plan when you were referencing the shape of the driveway and the width. I have it now. Would you mind just give me the bullet points of that one again, because I feel a little lost there.
So my understanding, and from what Holly said, I may be misunderstanding what they were intending to do. Looking at the site plan, the proposed site plan, the width of the driveway at the street fans out significantly from the width of the driveway as it approaches the garage. That's not the typical condition. Usually the driveway is straight all the way down and then just fans out at the curb at a, roughly 10-foot width. So because we know that they have plans to come back and do a more significant alteration to the paving that's already there in the front yard, it seemed appropriate to go ahead and take this opportunity to make the driveway a more typical historic width with a 10-foot approach and a more typical curb cut instead of continuing to have this fanning out design to it. But it sounds like you're maybe not intending to replace that right now.
Existing to proposed, it's just the existing condition that we're just not addressing in this application yet because we haven't finished the landscape plan, which will, inherently be part of how that driveway is graded, how it approaches the house, how the walks are. So in this application, we really just want to focus on the garage and then allowing us to remove that parking pad that's in the front.
And is the motivation for including the driveway on this submission at all just that you don't want to move forward with the garage if we can't give you the guarantee that we're going to allow you to do a new driveway?
Right. I mean, you want to take this, Miles?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really
Miles
just
Mixon,
order of
515 Northwest 42nd Street. So I don't want to sit here and talk about, you don't want to hear about what I'm going to talk to you about at the next meeting, but more or less what's going to happen here is the front driveway is going to go away. That's going to return to lawn. We're working with Brent Wall from Lod Studio, and we're trying to figure out basically, we have all this retaining wall, where a lot of that is not even needed, but you can see that right there, obviously, it's not really retaining anything. Now, the one to the west is a working retaining wall. But basically what we're trying to do is we want to obviously narrow the curb cut. And if you go back to the overhead view, you can almost see where the curb cut would have been if you see the darker part of the driveway, where it turns to go to lighter. Yeah, you can see that. We want to basically go back to a curb cut that's similar to that. The driveway next to Ms. Brunstetter's to the east, we would basically mimic what they have at the back as far as paving goes. We're also trying to remove a bunch of this back patio area that's been added. So we're going to basically reduce the overall permeable surface of the project as we move forward. But mainly right now, we can't really, we had a survey done, a full topographical survey, but we can't really do anything with the drive or any of the stuff until we kind of figure out where our grade is, where the height of the approach coming into the garage is, where that's going to be. And then once we get that, because we're trying to marry all these surfaces together and have the right drainage and everything, but we can't really do that until we set our footing and our slab for the proposed garage.
That makes sense to me.
Can we approve the garage and continue the driveway?
Yeah, we're going to come back to as far as the driveway goes, we're coming back with that, with a full-blown,
I think we have to see the plans on that.
engineered drawing of the driveway, slopes, drainage, everything. We're like, we need to get this, we need to get this garage taken care of first.
You want though, I do feel like the driveway leading up to the approved garage would need to be part of that application, right? So it's really just the curb cut change that would be part of the next application.
Yes.
We could include just the driveway and the paving in the rear leading up to
The only reason I would not, well, not the only reason, but I would not personally have a problem with approving the driveway today, only because that already exists. So it's not like they're proposing something wider or bigger. So anything they come back with is in theory
We can all
going to be
agree the front
smaller than
driveway is
that is.
atrocious. The black paving, we're just like, hey, baby steps here, let's get this garage thing taken care of, and then that'll be,
Step one.
Step one, basically.
Without seeing the final plans on the driveway, I really struggle with any sort of approval. And I think step one is garage, right? Without that, you wouldn't even consider the drive. So I would like to approve garage and then come back with what the true plan of the driveway is going to look like with landscaping and everything, and approve that whenever it comes in.
So approve item 4, continue item 5.
Yeah. You guys good with that?
Yep.
Well, Katie, could we extend that, I just don't want to get in a situation where we miss a continuance and we waste,
Yeah.
just because we haven't brought new landscaping plans yet.
Or withdraw?
We're kind of beholden to their schedule.
Yeah, we just got the survey back with all the elevations 2 days ago.
Can we just withdraw that?
So I think we could continue the driveway to the November meeting. And if that timing doesn't end up working for you guys, then we could withdraw that item and bring it back as part of the bigger package for the front yard, the landscaping, the paving, et cetera.
And to that note, another reason behind a lot of this is like, we don't want to like build this garage and have a giant concrete truck or forest truck come backing in to deliver roofing supplies, 3 months from now on our new driveway. So we're not planning on probably starting the driveway
Holly,
for another 3 or 4 months.
Was your question essentially, I think it was 2 questions ago, was it essentially, could we amend what you're asking for to, like, with regard to the driveway, not with regard to the garage, but because the curb cut is the concern here, was that what you were getting at? Like, could we get to an agreed upon condition with that, or no?
The approved driveway as illustrated on the site plan from the front of the house to the rear property line. Because that paving won't change between now and the next application.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, what I keep coming to is if they had not submitted anything to do with the driveway, or if they never did, it would always look just like that, and it would always be wide at the front. So I'm conflicted about, like,
To me, it's moot in a sense because
Right,
we
because it
are
exists.
remediating that parking there. So essentially, if you just cut the concrete and left it there until that's basically what you're approving, is us just remediating that soil.
Well, I guess what I'm concerned is the shape of the current driveway. I don't want to approve the shape of the current driveway because I think the current, or what's being proposed is well, that kind of that weird cut in where it almost flares out and then gets smaller. I don't want to approve that.
But are you worried about being able to pour an approach to the driveway? Is that what you're?
Right. I was just hoping that perhaps as part of the garage approval, we could include at least the paving that's in front of the
Right, the
garage
approach
itself.
to it, yeah.
So
I see that.
I think what we could do is to approve installation of driveway limited to the extension from the existing driveway to the garage.
Just a
But that
straight
the
shot.
rest of the driveway is not included in that approval, and that'll
That's
come back
wonderful.
as part of the other plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be just fine.
Okay.
Taylor, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's fine. The concern that I've got in just looking at just the designs or the proposal here is just the shape. So as long as it's a straight shot without some kind of weird extension of the driveway as it approaches like kind of the front of the street, I'm good with that.
I think they're just worried about how the driveway ties into the slab and
Yeah.
making sure that approach is still.
That
done.
makes sense, and I think that makes, yeah.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be that it's approved with the condition that the front portion of the driveway remains, that's not going to be touched. That's going to stay as it is, and all you're doing is adding additional paving from the end of the driveway to the garage. And that the front's not going to change, they're not going to replace it until they come back and do the whole project, and we land on something that's appropriate.
Do you need us to define front portion?
No, I mean, it's defined in the site plan where it's new concrete drive area, 480 square feet.
But, I mean, if we were making a motion, like,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
want
yeah.
any language on that?
The
I
rear
think-
portion, or
Yeah, I think
as
just
defined in the site
say,
plan.
approve install driveway limited to new concrete at rear yard. I think we all know what, I think we're all in agreement on what we mean by that.
Before we go any further, we do need to check if there's anybody from the neighborhood association that wishes to speak or any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project. Okay, excellent. Do we have a motion?
I will try. Okay. I motion to approve items 4 and 5 of HPCA 22-00109 with the specific findings referenced in the staff report and the agreed upon conditions that on item 5, the new drive be limited to new concrete at the rear yard. Is that sufficient? Okay.
Do we have a second?
And then, did we want to, there was discussion
Oh,
about reducing the
609
size, yep, to 609. Or not.
Are we all, or do we want it 600?
I would like it to be 609.
Okay. And with the agreed upon condition that the total footage of the garage in item 4 is limited to 609 square feet.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay, that item has passed unanimously. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will come back at 4:05. All right, we are back. Can we call roll again, please?
Commissioner Fudge,
Present.
Commissioner Raymond Phillip, Commissioner Corbin, Commissioner Gaines,
Present.
Commissioner Jordan,
Present.
Commissioner Meacham, Commissioner Milner,
Present.
Commissioner Poore, Commissioner Ramey.
Present.
Perfect. Thank you. We are still on cases, individual cases for consideration. We are now on item 8, HPCA 22-00114 at 439 Northwest 14th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Andrew Thomas, Andrew C. Thomas Architect, LLC, for David Ferris for certificate of appropriateness to 1, renovate existing carriage house, elective, 2, add new master bath and loggia, elective, and 3, add new curb cut, elective. Staff has recommended approval with conditions for the renovation of the carriage house and the new master bath and loggia. The conditions are, I believe, mostly just about making sure we have specific documentation for all the windows and doors materials that have been selected. Documentation of the various product types was provided, but needed more specification on some of the individual items. And then we recommended continuance on the proposal to add a new curb cut. This is adding a curb cut and access to a proposed large gravel parking area in the rear yard that seemed incompatible with the existing character and kind of beyond the scale of what we would typically see at a property of this size and scale.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? Would you like to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please? Hi.
Northwest 14th.
Perfect.
Hi, David Ferris, 439 Northwest 14th. My wife Meredith is here. She may have to step out for a minute and go pick up the reasons that we're here for today, which are 2 kids. So appreciate the comments on the first 2 projects, being the renovation of the back house and the addition, and comments and considerations are noted, and we'll take care of those. I think the thing I think we're all maybe wanting to talk about is the curb cut. And so before we go further, the definition of gravel, I think, is a broad one. And we absolutely do not and reject the use of pea gravel and all that stuff. That is not what we're here for. What we had in mind, it was something similar to what we have down here in the park, which is kind of I don't know what the right word, screening, crushed gravel, crushed granite, whatever that name is, to where it's more stable and permeable. We are wide open to different options of what that could and should be, whether that's pavers or something like that. As much as my son would love a concrete driveway for basketball purposes, we didn't think that was the right decision, and so certainly open to staff and the commission's recommendations on that. So,
I'm sorry.
Happy to have any questions.
Yeah. Was the reason for the use or the non-use of the pavement? Was that just because you were worried about the what were we just talking about? The lot
resident-
coverage.
Oh, the lot coverage.
What was the reasoning behind not using pavement?
Wanted to just stay more with the permeable. If the commission would prefer us to use concrete, we can do the calculation. I don't know what that percentage would be. That's certainly something we could take a look at and evaluate.
Okay.
And Andrew Thomas, our architect, he drew up, I don't know how many different configurations, quite a few. And so we tried really hard to find something that would, flow very well with the neighborhood. I think it's the southwest corner of 15th and Walker, just northwest of the property, has a very similar 2 driveway entrances there on Walker. And so we're trying to really stay with kind of the neighborhood design.
So there is currently a curb cut running into the carport structure from Walker.
Correct.
And you're talking about moving it exactly where?
So
We're adding one.
just to the west of that red dot behind,
Ah, gotcha.
yeah, it would be adding. So you would have 2 curb cuts. The existing curb cut would remain the same.
So an addition, not a replacement.
There would be, correct, there would be a second curb cut that would be just to the, if you can imagine a line just to the west of the back house. It's a fence line there, just right at that area.
And we have not discussed this, but my assumption was that part of the reasoning behind that was that the existing curb cut to the carport structure is not, that driveway is not long enough to park a car without sticking out easily past the sidewalk and potentially all the way into the street, depending on the vehicle. It's a very short driveway, so
Yes.
don't really have any form of off-street parking other than, there's not enough space there to park a vehicle. Staff's concern with the curb cut and the paving was both the material, the gravel that was indicated on the site plan, and then just the size of it, that was a very large area to take from landscape to a paving material, so.
Yeah, no, and very well heard there. That's why we wanted to stick with more of the permeable material.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, I think that was decomposing granite. So I think the curb cut would be concrete in the backyard, where there should be grass now, but because of the temperatures, is just dirt. That would be kind of the decomposed granite structure that would look reasonable for backyard gatherings and be well landscaped with potting plants around that as well. So it wouldn't be just flat, barren surface, but would be manicured. But the point is that it would be replacing the grass that's there.
If we did move to concrete, if you did move to concrete, is there we've had the gravel conversation a couple of times today already and have some neighborhood comments on it. Is there a calculation on the lot coverage if it were?
We can definitely
replaced?
do that calculation. We have not. If Katie's got her calculator and ruler out, we can do that right now. And while we're giving Katie time to do some calculations, sorry to put you on the spot, there are, I think, other alternatives that would still provide structural support, to park a car, to play a basketball game on, that are also permeable, little pavers or something of that nature, that we'd certainly be open to exploring alternatives there. We don't want gravel in the sewers. We don't want gravel in the swimming pool. So just, thinking of alternatives, we're happy to explore those.
Is it are you generally doing the curb cut and the kind of the replacement of this driveway to park cars in, to play basketball on? Because I think back to the one we saw earlier where they had a little cutoff on the side to park a car on. Is that something you all would consider in this particular spot too?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. So we certainly want to provide a space to park 2 cars. It's something we've been staring out our back window, trying to explore for the past 9 years. How are we going to do this? This seemed to be the best solution to where we could provide the space to park a car and for that car to turn around and come out of the driveway nose first. Teenage drivers backing out of the driveway. I mean, everybody walks their kids in the neighborhood. The last thing we want to do is run over Commissioner Jordan and her kids walking the neighborhood. So that we're trying to think about safety from that perspective as well. Putting it in that large area also allows us to, have more space for basketball and other kind of yard games in the backyard without creating a permanent structure.
And so it's 1,000.
Can you, why don't you come
Yeah.
up here?
And I think having it come back behind a fence area, I think just for security purposes of not, I don't know when you were talking, Taylor, about like just having a curb cut to pull the cars. I mean, I think we're definitely open to that. I just think we probably want them behind a fence.
Sure.
Just so they're not as exposed just for security purposes. So that would be our only, I guess, kind of thing there, which I mean, that potentially could be, I mean, could be an option, so.
Ma'am, can you state your name and address for the record too, please? Thank you.
Meredith Ferris, 439 Northwest 14th Street.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with items 1 and 2. It's 1,000 feet of whatever goes back there, whatever type of material. Assuming, I guess you referenced that there were other materials y'all were open to using beyond gravel or concrete. Is that something we could explore here today, Katie, or does that need to come back to staff? I mean, I'm assuming adding 1,000 feet of concrete would tip them way over the lot coverage.
I don't have enough measurements for everything else already on the site to right now calculate lot coverage. I think exploring other materials, and I think exploring whether or not the configuration of it could be reduced. Maybe the corners don't, maybe the corner doesn't need to be squared off. Maybe it could be a narrower approach that widens toward the garage so that it's not such a large area of paving in the backyard. But it sounds like they're amenable to considering other options, and maybe it's more efficient to continue it and let them work through with their architect what works back there.
I mean, I love the idea of off-street parking because we were just discussing that, while garages can be their own necessary evil, it keeps people from parking on the street and feels a little safer to walk and bike and this, that, and the other. It's a lot of whatever would go back there at the current size. It's a little above my pay grade, so to speak, though, to discuss any options about what it would be.
So I think what we would lean towards is approval on the first 2 items and then a continuance to give you guys the opportunity to potentially do some calculations, come back with some alternative plans, because in its current form, it's a struggle for us to get to an approval on it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so, and this is just a procedural question. Is there a way to continue item number 3 such that we can get, I don't remember what the right words are, administrative approval, whatever the right words are there, to where we get the appropriate materials under the appropriate lot size, kind of within the commission's request here? Is there a way to go ahead and move that forward pending
To do
staff
an
approval?
I think he's asking if we could do an approval with agreed upon conditions, if we could come up with a material and a size that felt good to everybody today?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Something, it's just a question, I'm not asking.
I think, so the only way that I think we could get there, and this is obviously going to come down to Katie and Angela, but I think the only way we could really get there is for it to be approved with agreed upon conditions is to have the calculated coverage.
Well, and let me jump in and just say I love this property. Your property is amazing. It's one of my favorite houses in Heritage Hills. When I saw the site plan on itself, I was like, oh, there's like a parking lot on the street. But then looking at the photos and actually being like, oh, that's this house. It's screened by this fence. So it's all behind the fence. It's out of the public view. I think the reason that I would have a hard time approving with specific conditions for staff approval is I think it's going to be a challenge to get this curb cut in with the trees and understanding what the impact on these trees are going to be, and then also how it affects your fence.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of this big picture of I'm not opposed to, I think Walker has several curb cuts along it. It doesn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily trigger me, although it is kind of a odd condition to have 2 in a quasi-circle drive, but I think there's ways to do it. I think that the picture of what that looks like isn't quite fully.
Yeah. Yeah, can we flip forward? There's a photo. I'll tell you when, just keep going. It's maybe one of the later. Okay, go back 1, and this may give us a decent idea. So that tree that's on the rightmost, So, yeah, that tree. So just to the right of that tree would be the entrance to the curb, and the fence that's right there would just be, that would be the gate. So it would be a gate that would slide to the west, or excuse me, to the north and to the south, so that, you know, the existing fence line would effectively be unaltered. The only alteration would be that one brick column that is there right now would just, there's two of them now with a small walkway between. That one brick column would be altered, so it would just be a fence structure. So the fence line would effectively be unaltered. And you can kind of imagine where that grass is and the bare spot in the garden, which is not why we're doing it. I can't get anything to grow there, but this is helpful. If you can, that's where the driveway would be, right in that kind of, that area right in there, if that makes sense. From the tree over to the stairs would be the.
So does the fence come down completely then in this area? Okay.
No, the fence would remain the same. That post, the brick column would be moved to the left, and you'd have a gate that mirrors the wood paneling or the wood fence line that would just move to the north and south, so it would act as though there was another fence panel.
The nice thing is a lot of it is shaded or covered from street view, in my opinion, too. But I still think we have to push for a continuance and see the kind of the final design plans once you guys determine what the coverage looks like and all that good stuff, too.
So the things we need to determine are get a better kind of illustration of how it would enter in, and then the materials in the backyard.
Yes.
And I think I don't think you need a ton of work. I think the site plan and the elevations, really just the site plan kind of just needs to show the pilasters and the fence.
Yeah, Andrew, is there anything, does that make sense? Okay.
Do we have any citizens that wish to speak on this project, or anybody from the neighborhood association that wishes to be heard? Okay.
And I will say, just from personal experience, that decomposed granite does erode out.
Yeah, good point.
It's a problem.
And if it's caught in your shoe.
I struggle with it on my property. Is the only reason I.
Yeah, we're open to options, so if you have some, please let us know. We're wide open. Thank you.
I just want to add that I only feel it's fair to say that with revisions, with any revisions that are going to come, I am a no vote on a curb cut. Because I know there's not a lot of properties in the neighborhood like this, but if you vote for this one, I just feel like I don't know if I'd be able to say no to any future ones, because I'd say the same thing. Well, what are the unique circumstances? It's not historic to that property. They're going to keep the existing one. I just feel like I'm just saying that. And if we all feel that way, I just want to save them the trouble of having to go through additional plans. I'm a no pretty much on anything that comes back. I just can't see a curb cut being put in there. And I'm also taking in the neighborhood's consideration too, because they have written in on that they have concerns with that as well. And we do like to lean on the neighborhood for their input, so.
I do have concerns over the precedent it sets to, if we move to concrete specifically, like how much concrete we're saying is okay, just because we have had a lot of unhappy customers leave here not getting what they've wanted out of, the amount of concrete they've asked for, lot coverage, whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I'm not totally offended by the curb cut. I hear your point, though, if everybody had two of them. Yep. But, I mean, maybe I think that's a question for you as to whether you're willing to continue working on it and see if you can come up with a solution.
And I know not everybody can, and that's no big deal, but that's a really unique request, and I just wanted to comment. I'm sorry, I'm just a no on it. I can't think of anything that would come that I'd say, yeah, go ahead, let's just slice another driveway into there, because I would think there could be another homeowner that would see that and go, that's exactly what I need. I need more off-street parking, and let's get it in the backyard, and we already struggle with the sizes of garages and pool. It's just, I'm just a no on that one. I'm really sorry.
I'm concerned with what's going to come back as well. But I will say, I think the unique circumstance, the reason why I have a little bit of hope is that short run between the driveway and the street. I mean, you can't park a car in
Well, it's just not that unique, though.
It's not? in that area?
No. I mean, I would say it's 50-50 if I were just eyeballing a guess. I think it's a unique circumstance within these guidelines. I don't know that it's unique to the neighborhood. I mean, I completely understand the desire for what it is. And again, I battle what's the lesser of two evils, because I don't love 15 cars parked on the street either. I love to be able to walk and, you know, feel like my kids can dart around safely. So I'm definitely not a no. I have concerns, but I'm not a hard no.
I have a question. Katie, I have a question on the staff recommendation on number 3. You guys said that you recommend a continuance, but you do put in there that it's inconsistent with the guidelines. So why did staff recommend a continuance if it's inconsistent with the guidelines and not supported? I'm just curious on if staff says it's inconsistent, then why would it not be a denial?
Because even though as proposed, it appeared to be inconsistent with the guidelines, we thought that there was the opportunity to make revisions to what was proposed and bring it into compliance with the guidelines. It's not so far out in left field that we would just say there's just no way you could ever do anything like this at all.
I don't disagree with you. I just was curious why you wouldn't just, if that's what the guidelines say.
We tend to avoid recommending outright denial unless we just really don't see any path to an approvable item. Try to give people, you know, their first at bat.
I know
to get that
especially
feedback.
in that immediate area, I know northwest of you, there's a circular driveway. There's a lot of double cuts in that neighborhood right around there.
Yeah, it's a good point, and Commissioner Milner definitely understand the precedent you feel that you'd be setting. Many of the corners, if not all the corners in the area, have double cuts, and as I said, the southwest corner of 15th and Walker, directly across from us, has 2 on the same side of Walker, and so we'll try to put together some evidence and a better design on what we think could be appropriate, and definitely work with staff to get some feedback in the neighborhood as well to see if we can find some common ground, because we're certainly open to that.
Perfect. Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, on the bright side. See, my mic's not turned
Hey,
on.
2 out of 3 is pretty good.
Yeah, on the bright side, we can motion to approve a couple of these things. I would move to approve items 1 and 2 of HPCA 22-00114 with the specific findings and conditions referenced in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Motion to continuance.
Oh, yes, trying to avoid that.
Hold on, let's get this one knocked out. Okay, that was passed unanimously, and I think we need a motion for the continuance as well.
Yes, I will motion to continue item 3 of HPCA 22-00114 to is the October meeting okay? That would mean you need things turned in by this coming Tuesday.
The next meeting is Wednesday, October 5th. New materials would need to be received by September 13th.
Okay, to the October meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, seconded by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. The continuance is approved as well. We'll see you next month. Okay, moving on to item number 9, HPCA 22-00117 at 612 Northwest 41st Street.
This is located in Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Bob Sign Construction for Tim Ferris for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, and 2, construct garage elective. This is the first time for this item to be before the commission. Just fun fact, this is right next door to the previous garage driveway that we discussed a few moments ago. Have a lot of activity on this block right now, apparently. Staff did recommend continuance on both items for this application. There is some documentation submitted of issues with the condition of the existing garage, but staff wasn't convinced that it was sufficient to support demolition of the historic structure. And then there were concerns related to the design, the height, the massing, proportions of the proposed new garage.
Right next door. There we go. Perfect. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Tim Ferris, 612 Northwest 41st Street.
Perfect. Talk to us about the condition of the garage. What have you guys found in that, and how bad is it?
Well, there's damage to the sill plate all around, at least where you can see it. It's enough to where my neighbor at 608 Northwest 41st, you can see into the backyard underneath the wall. So it's completely rotted out in places. The slab is cracked from 100% side to side, back to front. And we can demonstrate that with additional photos if necessary. The walls are leaning. We can try to demonstrate that as well, if possible. There's a problem, I think what's caused this is there's a problem with drainage that I've attempted to correct, but every time it rains, both sides of the garage are covered in standing water. Probably has been going on for years, and I don't see that it's practical to try to repair all of these problems. Seems more practical to build a garage consistent with what several of our neighbors have done. That's what we've tried to propose.
Katie, in looking at this west elevation, it appears that the entirety of the structure is not historic. Is that fair to say? Page 19 of the attachment.
It does look like it's had an addition on the back. I don't know if we know the date of when that would have been added on, but often when we see that type of little shed roof off the rear, that's something that's been added on over time.
I mean, I'm comfortable with demolition of the garage. It looks like, I mean, just going through the photographs, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it certainly looks like it's deteriorated quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that aspect of it too.
Sure. If you look at the picture, actually, the east side of the garage is the fence, and we don't know if it's on whose property it is. And so if you look at it, it's part of the fence itself, and so.
Just grown
you can
together.
Get back there, yeah, this is the fence line, and actually, there are soffit hangs over, and so the proposal is to get it off of the line of the property line, move
Nice.
it over, so you have an accessibility to even do the work, and also be able to do any repairs as necessary down the future.
Can you state your name and address for the record too,
Bob
please?
Sign, with Sign Construction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not personally offended by the proposal to demo the existing garage, especially with as many non-historic elements as are present.
And the fact that it's sitting on the property line too.
Yeah.
What about other commissioners? How do you guys feel about the condition of this? Are we comfortable with the demolition? That needs its own approval, right? Okay. No concerns? Are there any citizens or neighborhood association folks that wish to speak? Excellent. Do we have a motion to demolish?
Want to talk about the garage or just the demo?
Well,
I
figured we'd take step one, but we can talk about the garage too. So we have to
assuming
demolish.
he won't want to demo it if we don't construct one.
Yeah. I would think so.
I'd be happy to talk about the concerns or the findings that staff has indicated here. I've read it carefully. I've tried to understand, and there are a couple points that I don't understand and would need some clarification on, but I see generally that one concern or finding is that the height of the garage is taller than I guess the guidelines call for. So the reason we've proposed that height, and it's described as a 1.5-story garage, that's one of the questions I have. I don't know at what point a garage becomes defined as a 1.5-story, because what we're proposing is attic space. It's not living space above the roof of the parking spots or the ceiling where the parking spots are. So I get it in the sense that it's a tall garage. So our reasoning for that is if you look at the photos of our house, it's a very tall house. This is subjective, but in my opinion, the massing is such that the garage looks like an insignificant structure. It's a shed almost when compared to the house. I think proportionally the height that we've proposed is more consistent with the height of the house. I note that one of the concerns or the findings from staff is that the pitch of the roof is being proposed as a 12 over 12. We've had a couple of houses approved for a 10 over 12 and a 12 over 12, just 3 or 4 houses down from us. I think that's relatively consistent with some other garages that have been proposed. I'm open to adjusting that pitch or even replicating the clipped gable on the front end if that would soften the height of it. But the other thing about the height, I don't think it's going to make that much of an impact because of how we've proposed moving the footprint of the garage. It will be pushed back further than the current garage and moved over further behind the house. So it will be more hidden by the house, behind the house. So I think both of those things will lessen the visual impact of a taller structure on that area. But I'm certainly open to some tweaks that would make it more closer to conforming with the guidelines.
Katie, since it was just approved and right next door, what was the exact height of the garage we just approved? Pop quiz.
Well, I would certainly like to see some of I guess the question is, to what extent is that garage that's back there historic? And do we have the documentation of what the previous garage looked like and size and all of that too?
So the garage that was just approved at the property right next door is 16 feet tall.
And this one is 23?
This one,
There's
yes,
some,
it's
there's
proposed.
some inconsistencies in the drawings, because there's one dimension that shows it as 34, and then others that show it as 23. So one shows it as like an 11 and then a 23. So I'm trying to wrap my head.
I believe the correct height should be 23, and we could certainly clarify that. And if there were ever a certificate of appropriateness, we could have that listed as the height.
I think that's just an error. They added 11.
Okay, okay. So I'm looking at the actual drafted is 24 feet. The drafted elevation. If I'm
Yes, that's what I'm reading
If I'm
too.
reading that correctly. The last sheet. No, that's.
Oh, wait, no, I've got 23.
Sure.
Which is-
We submitted also a graph of a similar garage that was improved in 2015 by the HP at 540 Northwest 51st Street, and their height on their garage was 24 feet.
That's what I'm looking at.
So, yeah, that last page. I mean,
It's tall. It's very tall. I would like to see the pitch drop down a little bit, and certainly not as high as it is. And then there were some other recommendations from staff in terms of 2 garage doors and painted and things of that nature. Are you comfortable with those changes as well?
I didn't catch. I caught the 2 garage door. I didn't catch the other.
Let me see what else is in here. Let's see.
the last one we just approved was 1 door as well, correct? And I hate to keep comparing them, but they are literally right next door. I'm just wondering if we approved one with a single door next door, I don't really know why the staff recommendation would vary to state that it needed to have 2 doors here.
Yeah, I
Well,
guess
the
I
current-
can
the
certainly
current-
get there too.
I
I'm
love two
understanding this
doors. I always
correctly, the
prefer
current
it,
garage has a single door, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Right, double, yeah, but one door.
The one that was just approved, I apologize, I didn't call that out in the discussion with the applicant. It's noted in the considerations that they have a single two-car door and that the guidelines support 2 single doors, but that wasn't, well, we didn't recommend conditions because we didn't recommend approval. So it wasn't listed as a
Got it.
condition.
That makes sense.
So,
Well, I mean, considering that we did just approve that next door, and considering that this already exists with a singular door, I don't feel it's appropriate for us to demand 2 door bays.
Yeah, I think that a consideration to throw in here is, so your current house is probably what, like a 312 pitch?
I
Maybe
really
4?
couldn't say. It's certainly less steep than what we're proposing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, without doing some looking around, I would wager that, and maybe not, but some of the 1212, 1412s are usually tied to a Tudor house. And I don't know that I don't know how the guidelines read specific to being of the same character but less detailed. It's almost like I don't necessarily have a problem with the height. It just seems like it's
an aggressive
and a variant from the architectural style of the main house.
It's certainly going to contribute towards this kind of like imposing feeling of, 2 extremely tall structures right up on, a more traditional Tudor house.
Well, and if you went with a lower, a less steep grade, it wouldn't, the garage wouldn't have to be as tall, correct?
Correct.
Something that matches the kind of the house more so.
Well, I think that what you're after is trying to get the storage space. What you're after with the 1212 pitch is less stylistic and more functional. You're trying to get the storage space.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the primary goal of the pitch. The secondary goal was to have something that appeared a little bit more consistent with the structure, the primary structure on the property. We just felt, and this is subjective, but we felt like the current garage looks too small. It looks out of place with the current house. So.
Right, and I guess that's what again, I need to see how staff feels or how the guidelines support this. But if given the 2 options of this versus a taller plate height with a lesser pitch, I feel like a taller plate height with a lesser pitch would be more compatible with the existing house.
I agree with that because the house itself is so tall, but the pitch of the roof's not. So that's what I was going to ask, if that is something that could be considered, is just to increase the top plate.
Put my input in, is that this is about my 4th garage I've done in Crown Heights, and
Can you step up to the mic?
come closer to the mic for us, sorry.
the 4th garage I've done in Crown Heights, and they have approved 712 pitches, so that would be quite a bit less slope than a 712 pitch would be.
I think the main thing for us is how it interacts with this particular house, and not knowing what the other ones were, what they looked like, what their style was, kind of what their unique circumstances were, is the struggle that I've got.
Well, or we could put a hip roof on like you have on the house.
Yeah.
Right, I think, I don't know that I'm dictating that it has to match the 412 or 312 pitch of the house. I'm just noting that a 1212 pitch is pretty divergent from the character of the property.
I think that's fair to say. We were taking cues from other houses that weren't, I'm not an architecture expert or anything, but I didn't think there were Tudor houses nearby that were approved with steeper pitches, more like a 10-12 pitch. So that was the basis for that.
Well, the roof line you proposed is certainly more standard within Crown Heights. I mean, the existing home is kind of more of the anomaly, but.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think a continuance on the on the garage is probably necessary with maybe some design element changes, something to shrink down the size of it a little bit, I think. Does that sound right to the rest of the commissioners? Or do we see a path towards approval? You.
I'm sorry, can you state that? And so there was the
I
issue.
think we're gonna motion to approve demolition. And then I think we want to see a continuance on the design of the garage. Maybe something that's not so aggressively tall.
Yeah, I mean, I think staff's findings is pretty spot on here, where it says the proposed garage does not meet the does not approximate the original form, mass, and style and detail of the existing historic garage. So I think maybe, personally, I don't, you'd have to make sure you're fitting the guidelines, the intent of the guidelines. I personally don't have an issue with the taller massing or the change in the massing, because it's still secondary to the main house. It doesn't, there's a lot of verbiage in the guidelines about, not a high style garage. It's not meant to be. So I'm fine with all that. I think just trying to get it in line with the character of the property would make me more comfortable with it.
I did have one question. I won't be able to attend the October meeting if our presence is required. So I did have one question so I could address that ahead of time. There's a reference to the window to wall ratio, and I didn't understand what we were doing incorrectly in that regard.
Katie, do you know what that one is in regards to? Where did you see that?
Under considerations on page 9 of the staff report.
Windows in those. So it would depend on how long that wall was as to whether or not.
Talking about
So it's kind of a general observation that you've got an existing garage that has windows and doors down the side elevation. I know one side is acting as a fence, but that the other sides have windows, doors, openings, and that the proposed garage doesn't have as many openings. So
Okay.
that wall is in the backyard. It's not a location that's visible, but that's always a characteristic of new construction that we look at as comparison as part of assessing compatibility.
Thank you.
So the option on continuances could be October? Yes.
I think that we had, and there's some concrete to be done as an approach. It was on the site plan, but it's not on the, saying in the elective here as you've listed that.
It was supposed to be in the packet, is that what you're saying?
It was in the packet.
Okay.
Proposed, once we're moving the garage back, we have to add some approach to the concrete. And it was not listed on, on your scope here, so.
So I think that could probably come into play on the next continuance. Does that sound right? Maybe
Yeah, that can be
address
part of a continuance and honestly could be an administrative approval as well, because it's just a small area of paving in front of the proposed garage.
Okay.
So yeah, it's noted on the site plan. It wasn't written on the application page, so I think we just didn't catch that when we were entering the items into the format.
Okay. So are you comfortable with a continuance on the redesign and the build of the garage? Not that you want that, but.
Well, we'd like the garage. We'd like to build the garage, so whatever we need to do to do that.
I think we need to do a continuance and come back with some plans that maybe address some of the comments that we've heard today with the pitch of the roof and things of that nature.
So just a question, what pitch do you think would work there? That
That's,
So, I mean, first and foremost, the guidelines say we should approximate the historic garage when we know what that was. And you have a historic garage that's still standing with a relatively low-pitched roof with a clipped gable. So I would use that as a starting point. And then also looking at the pitch of the roof on the house. That's what, just from a guidelines analysis standpoint, I think staff
So we
would say.
can try a 7/12 pitch and see how that looks, and then maybe submit it to staff approval to see how they might.
So since the applicant can't be here in October, we have the ability to continue it to either October 5th or to November, I wrote it down, November 2nd.
But I can't represent him then.
You could represent him at the October meeting if he's comfortable with that, but he wouldn't be here to be able to agree to any sort of changes, revisions, and that would also require that you get all your new documentation to us by Tuesday. Which if you're kind of playing around with the roof form and what you think is going to work for what you're trying to do, might be an awfully quick turnaround.
That was my only concern, that I wouldn't be here to be able to approve changes. So if there was anything else that stuck out to anyone that I can address today, that would be helpful, or that I can address with staff for the submission next week, hopefully.
we try really hard not to design people's projects for them. We try really hard. And so I think the comments that we've given you is probably what we've got at this point without seeing the new design.
Fair enough.
So we need to do a motion for demolition.
Okay, so I motion to approve item 1 of HPC 22-00117.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Remy, second by Commissioner Jordan. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
The recommendation was not for approval, so are there any findings you want to add to the motion to approve? Just to, I mean, you can just simply go with the standard motion for demolition and we'll insert that it's.
Based off the findings in the staff report and comments from the homeowner?
Well, the findings in the staff report don't
support
that.
Based on comments from the contractor and
Based on the
homeowner.
unique circumstance that it's grown into the fence?
How about based on the fact that the commission has agreed with the applicant that all or most of the historic fabric will be lost in any type of rehabilitation?
That sounds bulletproof right there.
Thank
Let's
you.
do that one.
What Angela said.
Yeah.
So do I need to re-motion that?
Yes.
Do you need to rescind your motion?
Okay.
Motion is for that reason, and say what Angela said.
Angela, do you want to repeat what you just said?
I think I've got it, but I'm trying to figure out how to. Do I just re-motion, or I would like to add to the motion?
You can just start it again.
Okay.
Say it again and add it for that reason.
I motion to approve item 1 of HPCA 22-00117 to demolish garage with the specific findings and unique circumstances discussed in the meeting, that any attempt to remediate or repair the remodel or remediate the existing garage would be detrimental to the existing historic fabric of that garage.
That would result in the loss of all or most historic fabric.
It would result in the loss of all or most of the existing historic fabric.
It's a good motion.
I'll still second it.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Remy, second by Commissioner Jordan. All in favor, please vote. Demolition is approved unanimously, and we have a motion for the continuance.
I motion to continue item 2 of HPCA 22-00117 to the meeting of
November 2nd.
November 2nd.
Do you have a second?
I will second that.
Moved by Commissioner Remy, second by Commissioner Jordan. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that was passed as well. We'll continue that to the next meeting, or the November 2nd meeting. Is that right? There we go. Thank you.
So the next meeting's October 5th. We just continued to November 2nd. Is that?
Which one did we want to go to?
I thought I heard October, so I would prefer.
If
an
October was in there, we'll stick with that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, guys.
The motion was November 2nd.
Oh, it was
but
November
We
2nd.
need to,
The motion was November 2nd, but if you want it to be October, then we can rescind the motion that was made by the movement and the seconder. That's out, and then we get a new motion and second.
I would prefer that. I'm sorry I missed.
That's okay.
Okay.
Do I need to formally rescind
Yes.
said motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move to formally rescind.
No, just rescind it.
I rescind it. I motion to, right, the new
Rescind your
motion.
previous motion.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. The previous
Start
motion has
over.
been rescinded,
Yeah.
seconded.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move to continue HPC. Do I not have to do that?
You rescinded it, the seconding person agrees with your rescission.
I agree with the
Now we're
rescission.
back to the,
Square one.
yeah.
Okay. I move to continue item 2 of HPCA 22-00117 to the October 5th meeting.
I second it.
Moved by Commissioner Remy, second by Commissioner Jordan. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
It's late in the day.
Fifth time's the charm.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's passed. We'll see you in October.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Rita,
Moving on to item
do
number
you
10.
have to specify a time period for a continuance?
Yes.
You do?
It has to be continued with dates certain, so that the public is aware when the matter will be heard again. So if you just say it's continued, they don't know when to come back.
Moving on to item number 10, HPCA 22-00120 at 426 Northwest 17th Street.
this is located in Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Timothy Phelps, Tim Phelps Carpentry for Barry Johnson for certificate of appropriateness to 9 install can lights elective and 10 install floodlights required. This is the first time for this item, this application to be before the commission. We are very careful with can lights because that's not a historic light fixture and can become intrusive when we see lots of them installed all around the perimeter of a property. In this case, because of where they're proposed to be installed and the minimal use, staff did recommend approval of the installation of the can lights with unique circumstances. We recommended continuance on the floodlights. That is a light fixture that the commission typically does not approve, and the guidelines would support a more historically appropriate, compatible light fixture in a traditional location for light fixtures.
Thank you. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Timothy Phelps, 7541 Northwest 114th Street.
Perfect, thank you.
So I apologize, first of all. The way this came to be was when I applied for the building permit, and I had reached out to historical first. I was under the impression that to do the repairs, we didn't make any changes. We only repaired rotted soffit, that I didn't need approval. And so I applied for a building permit, and they were pretty slow getting back, and the house is in significant disrepair. And so we went ahead and started to repair the rot while taking pictures. When the building office called and said, hey, you need HP approval. So I called, and I had already done the repairs. And so the lighting that you see represent lights that we took down. And so there were already installed floodlights at those two locations. They were just installed with external conduit for the access for electricity. And so we just ran except for, excuse me, the one on the driveway side, the conduit is actually in the soffit. We just put up a new fixture. And so she called me immediately. She called me right away. She's like, "Oh, we don't approve those." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Whatever it takes to appease the commission, we will change." I've already discussed with my homeowner that most likely those will not be approved. They have no problem with that. What I would like is the opportunity to offer an alternative light. It was too close to the submission time to get the information. I have since then gone at night and taken impact pictures on both sides of the property of how the light that I have installed impacts the neighbors. I also have the manufacturer specifications with the color and the information you would want to know about that specific fixture, but we're not married to that, so whatever you guys say has to go, goes. And that is in reference to the two spotlights. The can lights in question are in the alcove. If you look at the other pictures, I'm not sure what pictures you have, so I keep looking up thinking maybe they'll change. What that is a 2-inch wafer light that cannot be, a bulb that cannot be changed or modified. And those come in it is dimmable, and it is in the, if I have the correct numbers, I believe it is less than 3,200. It's a very dim, shine straight down. The original, there was not a porch light in the back over the kitchen door. And so, I mean, it's quite unsafe. So the goal of that was only to light that area. There was an additional security light on the, would be the southwest side, that after learning about the conditions and the recommendations, so I omitted that with the customer. But since we already have these two installed, I was wanting to take the opportunity to get that information to you. I have it, I just didn't get it in time for you to look at it now. But I would like the opportunity to propose an acceptable light in that location. And if we can't do that, we'll blank those locations off and use that as an access to get wire down to where I understand we could put one by the porch door, which there wasn't one originally, but whatever it takes to get through, I would like to keep the project going.
Well, thank you for being flexible on your project. That's always helpful for us too. I don't think that in just research, I don't know that we've ever approved floodlights on historic homes like this, and so I would be in favor of doing away with those. I think something a little more appropriate would be something like running the power down the wall and having it be almost like a door light, porch light type thing. Also, the garage might be an appropriate place to have some lights on. Not sure if that's historically.
Yeah, there's currently not a light on the front of the garage.
Okay.
So the way this is positioned, one aims at the garage door, and then one aims down at the corner.
Sure.
And so,
from a security perspective, it seems obviously very reasonable to have floodlights and whatnot, but from your neighbor's perspective, I can see why that would not be so desirable. The can lights, I'm perfectly comfortable with. What did you have in mind for an alternative solution with the lighting that you're considering right now? You said you had something else in mind.
well, we don't have one in mind yet.
Okay.
We're just open to whatever it takes.
Okay.
So what I will have to find a fixture that, since we're going, what we have now is just it's a standard, it's a very small LED. I mean, you can see if you see it in the picture, I'm not sure, do they have the pictures that I sent you? So, I mean, it's a very small fixture. So I would need to find something, since we're going to an actual wall fixture, we'd need to find something that looks appropriate that would mount and hang on the brick. This is more, what's there is actually significantly smaller. What we took down is one of those big old school style with the screw in, look like warmer bulbs, and so this is much more discreet. But it, again, it does not, if it doesn't follow the guidelines, then it just doesn't follow the guidelines. That's okay.
Perfect. Other questions from commissioners or comments?
I'll just note that staff can administratively approve light fixtures that meet the guidelines. So if the commission approved the can lights and then perhaps continue the floodlights to November, then between now and November, we would likely be able to come up with an administratively approvable project, and you wouldn't actually have to come back.
I love that
Yeah,
idea.
that's great. Now, one question, in that spot, since I have that hole cut, Could I submit potentially a downlight for that spot, one of the same, it's a wafer light. It's not something that could be modified, a bulb that they could change. They are dimmable. And I could for sure get that in within reason as something that is not obtrusive to the neighbors at all. Can I just submit it? I mean,
Typically, we don't allow can lights in the soffits on houses like this. I think we would prefer to see something more of a traditional
Sure.
light fixture on the side of the
not
house.
a problem.
Okay. Okay. Any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, can I move approval of HPCA-22-00120? I guess they're going to be item 9. No, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, item 9.
Yeah, item 9. Do we need to separate them? Because we're going to continue on.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, then I guess it's just item 9,
with the findings and unique circumstances.
with findings and unique circumstances, as noted in the staff report.
We have a second.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, seconded by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that was passed unanimously. Do we have a continuance motion on item number 10?
When are we continuing this to? October or no?
To,
Did you say
November 2nd.
November 2nd. So I move, we continue item 10 of HPCA-22-00120 to the November 2nd Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second as well.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, seconded by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, the continuance is passed as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, last one on items for individual consideration. We've got number 11, HPCA 22-00125 at 930 Northwest 22nd Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus, Creative Home Design, for Fred and Bethany Neighbors for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct garage with studio elective, 2, replace driveway elective, and 3, replace fence elective. We recommended approval with some conditions on this application. Conditions were related to a few dimensions that seemed to be mismatched on the drawings, making sure we had all of those marked correctly on the final version of drawings for the staff report, and then possible revisions to the proposed driveway if so directed by the commission.
All right. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. Fallon Brooks Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd Street. Representing the applicant. I don't have any problem with the conditions that were in the staff report. Angela and I talked about keeping the width of the driveway to the width of the garage. There is an existing apron that's in there. It's like grown over, and so what was on the drawings was we were just going to go back to the edge of that, but we can certainly move it down if we need to. It's not really super noticeable anyway. And then one of the other things was some windows on, there's 2 long walls to the north side, which faces an alley, and the east side, which faces a fence. There is 1 window on the east side, but we would be amenable to doing some small little like 2020 clear stories on the north side to kind of break up that long wall if we need to. And then the porch part that has just a door on it is behind the fence, so it's not really noticeable from the street.
So you all are agreeable with the conditions staff has recommended?
Yes.
I'm good with that.
I would support a motion to approve as well.
For the record, can we just, what exactly are all the conditions? I have them, but
It just
to pull
says,
back
I'll
up.
just read it, that the revised drawings addressing dimensions of building materials as noted in the staff report, revisions to the south elevation if directed by the commission, and revisions to the proposed driveway if directed by the commission be submitted to staff prior to release of the CA.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So commission, are we directing anything with regard to the driveway or to the south elevation?
Well, yeah. So it says the driveway may widen to the width of the garage door. Or
Yes.
that probably should be, that must widen to the width of the garage door and not go any further.
And I think what the applicant was hoping for was to widen to the width of the garage,
Oh,
not the
I'm
door.
sorry.
I mean, the guidelines say the width of the garage door.
So is an agreeable condition that it widens to the width of the garage door?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that what we're all looking for here? And what about the south elevation?
So I think that was the applicant's proposal to add some smaller windows on the south elevation.
It's difficult because it's just a garage, you know?
Right.
Putting windows there does provide a security risk of some kind. And then the only other thing on that south side is a long bathroom wall that's just plumbing and all kinds of stuff, so we wouldn't put a window there. I mean, if I had my preference, it would be that we didn't have to put any windows on that north side, but I'm amenable to whatever you guys want to recommend.
And the south, so yeah, the south side is in the alley.
Yeah.
I don't personally know why we would need windows in the alley. Not a soul sees it, and I agree with you that it's a safety concern.
Dangerous, yeah.
So I have no conditions for the south elevation.
I agree.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that.
Nothing, Taylor? Nothing?
Nothing.
It's a garage, are you sure?
Is the garage, it's not too big. Like, I don't even have to address that.
Don't poke the bear.
Okay, and then what about the fence? Do we want to discuss the fence at all?
Yeah, not really, no. What's the issue with the fence right now?
What's the issue with the fence?
Well, I don't see anything
We don't
in the
even have a
staff report.
recommendation for the fence,
You
so
don't have
apparently
a
there's no issue.
recommendation.
Sorry, that got
Okay.
totally
And
dropped off. Let me
I
see.
think there is a recommendation for the driveway either.
It was too large, but I think we
I
talked
think
about.
the driveway is just wrapped in with the findings for the garage.
Yep.
Because we've addressed that. So I think,
Yes.
I don't think we had, let me double check, sorry.
How bad is the fence?
Yeah, tell us
Is
about
it
this
really
fence.
bad?
That fence is in real rough shape, yeah.
That's what I thought it might
Yeah.
be.
So we're just going to replace it. And I think the location for the new one is further back than what the guidelines require anyway, so we good.
So, question.
Yep.
Is that, is there you're requesting an additional curb cut at the alley?
No,
already
if we go back to the image that was just up, you can see on the aerial that there's a, just to the north of that circle, you can kind of see that there's actually an apron that's in there. It's just grown over. If you go out and look at it in person, it's real obvious. But, so that apron was wider. I guess at some point there was a larger garage or a parking pad or something, I'm not really sure. And so that's why we were just going to pave to that point, but we can certainly make the apron just the width of the garage.
Okay, no, just clarification.
So is our agreed upon condition that the apron is the width of the garage door, or that the driveway is I guess, how many feet are we talking about to get from the apron? Is
so I
there
would-
even a driveway, or is it all apron?
It's just 15 feet from the property line to the garage. So typically when we have a corner garage like that that's fairly close to the street, we just do the same width all the way up. We don't have it fan out because that.
My request would be 22.6, which is the width of the entire, that massing of the garage where the door is at.
And is that the width of the current apron?
No, it's wider.
It's
Well,
wider.
it's grown over, but it's under there, it's wider, yeah.
Okay. So we would like the whole thing to be the width of the garage door.
Or the garage, I'm comfortable with either one.
Well, it's a little more than the garage door. It's like, it goes to the edge of the stem wall, but yeah.
Katie, any specifics on that?
You know, the guidelines say the garage door. I think we have fairly regularly approved driveways that extend into the full width of the garage because it does make for this awkward little
Yeah, I'm fine
space
with
to
that.
either side.
I am too.
Okay, so we are talking about, to make sure I include the fence, we are talking about just items 1, 2, and 3 with the agreed upon condition that the driveway and apron width do not exceed the width of the garage.
and that the documentation of.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
the
already in there.
dimensions. Yep,
Yes,
okay.
okay. I will motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3 of HPCA 22-00125 with the agreed upon condition that the driveway and apron do not exceed the width of the proposed garage, and with the conditions stated in the staff report.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us through our items for individual consideration. We'll move on to item number 7, other business. The first one we have is BOA 15107 at 205 Northwest 33rd Street.
This is located in Edgemere Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Blaine Marvel for certificate of that says certificate of appropriateness. It's request to HP Commission to make recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on home share request. This is one we've had, every time we have one of these, we have to kind of go through what the rules are and what district we're in. So this Edgemere Park, which is HP, so all home shares in HP districts have to get a special exception from the Board of Adjustment. And one of the requirements that has to be met is that that the owner be on site at the time of rental. So the applicant has indicated that that is their intent, that they would be on site at the time of rental. I keep cutting in and out, sounds like. So we recommended approval with condition to Board of Adjustment, with a condition that approval only be granted with confirmation that the owner be on site at the time of rental as required by the applicable regulations. We did receive a written comment from the neighborhood regarding this application that you all have at your seats.
All right. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Blaine Marvel, 205 Northwest 30th.
Perfect. Do you plan on being at this house when
Yes, it is
rentals are
my
taking place?
Primary residence. I didn't catch the last thing that you said, Katie. Sorry.
There is a letter, and I should have sent this to you, and I didn't do that, from the Edgemere Park Neighborhood Association Preservation Review Committee expressing some concerns about the application.
Okay.
So I can give you this copy if you want to take a look at it.
I mean, I tend to think that the neighborhood is concerned about it, but I think that the applicant is following the letter of the law, and for me, I would support an approval.
Is there an accessory structure, like a garage apartment or something?
No, there
So
is a
where-
detached garage.
Where will you be, so you're saying you're
I'm
going
going to be staying in the loft.
Okay, so there are 3 bedrooms and a loft?
Yes.
So a loft within the primary residence?
Yes.
So more like a B&B almost. So that would be 9 people, 9 or 10 people in the 3bedroom.
I think I put 8 on the
Right, but including you're going to be in there too.
Sure, sure.
I think I just trying to make sure I understand, because that's kind of the gist of the opposition, is that that's a lot of people. I mean, nobody can regulate how many people we each have in our homes at any given time, but since there's a reason it has to come before us and come before the Board of Adjustment. And so just making sure I understand how many people we're talking about at once.
It's a lot of people, but again, I don't think we can tell her how many she can or can't have in the property, right?
Well, I have one question. Can you address the concerns that we received about parking? Because I think that's, if you have 9 people in a house with,
Yeah.
you only get 1 in the driveway unless you're going to expect your guests to do the car ballet thing.
Actually, you can fit 2 in the garage, and I believe you can fit 2 behind the garage, and probably 3 in the driveway, and then there is street parking.
So guests will be able to park inside your garage?
Yes. I would probably occupy one of the spaces.
But again, if somebody's parked in the garage in the back, then you have no
That's true.
regress. So,
Right.
I mean, pretty much everybody parked on the street.
That's
Pardon?
what will realistically happen.
Realistically, everybody's going to
Yeah,
park
I
on the
guess I
street.
didn't really think that through.
And you have 2
so-
parking spots in front of your house, so you're only limited to 2 in front of your house and then 1 in your driveway. That means those other 6 cars presumably are going to be parked in front of other people's yards.
Correct. Unless it's like 6 or 8 people traveling together.
Right.
I assume you're not going to have everybody with a different car. So,
Yeah, and I mean, you're basically doing a VRBO, right?
I would like to, or do traveling nurses would be another way. I've had some friends do that, and they've had really good success, so.
I think if you're going to be on site, I would just strongly encourage you to work with your guest to park as best as possible all on your property. And that might be some education. And he said it best. It is we live in these small homes with tiny driveways. You kind of have to do that car ballet because it is a lengthy letter of concern signed by several the 33rd Street residents there. And you can just see that if you have to plan for every situation that's going to happen here, that you could have 6 different vehicles there and nobody wants to park behind somebody. You know, I just would encourage you, as I'm sure you're going to be, just do the best you can to get people on your property. Encourage them to park in the garage behind and just acclimate them to that. Otherwise, you're right, they're going to be consistently parked in front of other people's homes. And that seems to be the big concern with what your neighbors have expressed.
I will note
Thank
that
you for saying that, because I've never done this before, and part of the reason I'm doing it is I'm just curious, and I just didn't think that part through, so thanks.
Have you talked to any of your neighbors?
I've
immediately?
talked to my neighbors that are directly to my right are only there once every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then the neighbors that are there to my left, they rent.
Okay.
I have not expressed to them that I'm considering doing this. I have to the neighbors to my right, and they were just really sweet about it.
I would also encourage you to talk to your immediate surrounding neighbors and tell them what's going on. The ones across the street too, because it's
Right.
going to affect them.
Yeah.
People are going to pull up and park there. However, if your neighbors are on a regular schedule where they're gone, you might contemplate if at some times, if you have residents, if your guests can park in their driveway too. Because I have heard of that done. There's 7 Airbnbs in my neighborhood, and I've heard a couple people say that they've been doing that. So I can't recommend that. I'm not recommending that up here, but I'm just saying there may be a situation there. But it's coming out of my encouragement. You need to talk to your neighbors. Please do that and
Well,
just kind of tell them what's going on.
You said your immediate neighbor to the right you've talked to, and they're okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what the page here where you have the affirmation of all these addresses, what is that for? It says you have an affirmation that these are your neighbors, but it doesn't say.
I had to mail letters to all my neighbors saying that I was going to be doing
Okay.
this.
I figured that's what it was, but it didn't say anything. It just said, these are my neighbors.
Sorry.
No, that's part, yeah, that's part of what they have to submit for Board of Adjustment, for the special exception request. But yeah, it's in front of us, it's not entirely clear what that's for. I was just going to note that when I've seen Board of Adjustment review home shares, they often include the requirement that in your advertising for the home share, you state that there's no on-street parking. Now, truth be told, people can park on the street, it's allowed. It's not really enforceable, but they ask people to advertise indicating this is how many parking spaces are available to you, so that when someone is looking at your property considering renting, they're at least thinking about how many cars are we bringing, how much space is there to park, and not overwhelming the neighborhoods, hopefully. So that's just something to maybe be prepared for when you go to Board of Adjustment for the actual special exception, that they may ask about that as well.
Thank you. And ideally, it's not to have 8 people. I just wanted to at least advertise that, because
That's the maximum.
it's right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the point here is to just be a good neighbor,
Be
because
considerate.
I'm looking at the aerials in the packet, and there are 3 cars parked on the street not in front of your property. So if people park in the
Yes.
streets, historic neighborhoods have cars parked in the street, that's reasonable. I think just being aware that there's concerns from the neighbors and being a good neighbor, I think, is you're not required to do that, but just
But I am.
It's the right
a
thing to
good,
do.
Important to
a good
me.
policy.
It's the
Yeah.
right thing to do.
I think this is checking all of the boxes. I don't see any reason that we should not recommend it. It had to, I'm sorry, I'm gonna bungle that with the BOA.
Are there any
What we
citizens that
are
wish to be heard?
recommending.
So we are making a recommendation to the Board of Adjustments for approval of home sharing,
So I was just trying to,
special exception
So
to
you
allow
would
for home
say,
sharing?
I move to recommend approval with condition. Da-da-da-da.
Do you want to make a motion?
yeah. I motion to provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment regarding an application for a special exception to allow for home sharing on BOA-15107.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your tips.
Thank you. All right, that was passed unanimously. Now, we're going to listen to a presentation on HPCA 22-00049 at 120 Northwest 27th Street. And if you all wouldn't mind, state your name and addresses for the record, please.
Mitesh Patel, 120 Northwest 27th Street.
While they're signing in there at the podium, I'll give a little background. This actually was an application that was before the commission several months ago and was continued. After it was continued, we, in working with the applicant, realized they were going to need either a number of variances or to rezone the property to be able to accommodate the type of development that they were hoping to do, which was multifamily new construction. It's a lot that is zoned to allow for multifamily, but the requirements for things like lot size and lot width and height restrictions all kind of present barriers to developing that property type in this location. This is not unlike the SPUD on Robinson that we just reviewed earlier in this meeting that ended up rezoning to a SPUD so that they could build a 6-unit apartment building on that site. So we've met with the applicants and talked about this project with them a number of times. They wanted to put before the commission a couple of different options for possible proposals to get some feedback before they came forward with a full-fledged design, looking at what they might consider. So I think we don't have, well, I think you have attachment 1 and attachment 2 in your presentation. And then I have some additional kind of supplemental information that they brought today as well. But essentially it's whether or not to do one structure with all of the units in that structure and parking at the rear, or to do 2 structures with multiple units in each structure.
I think one thing to
Split up.
keep in mind, just for you two gentlemen today, is that, you know, we can tell you, hey, we kind of like this plan, but we can't, I wouldn't say that that's like approval from us.
Right.
And
Yes.
certainly you're gonna have to come back and we're gonna have to do the whole detailed, you know,
Yes.
everything. And some people think that we're saying, oh yeah, that's good. And they're like, okay, they've got approval from the commission, we can go now, and you can't. So just want to make that clear. Okay, perfect.
And just for corrections, 4 units. Separate or together, it should be 4 units.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah, so our initial proposal was a garage apartment in the back, and since there wasn't an adjacent garage apartment to our property, that was denied by the committee. So we kind of went, you know, with help of Katie and Angela, we kind of went back and forth in terms of what we can introduce. So we were thinking either we do a, you know, just that initial proposal of the garage apartment, just convert the bottom unit to also another apartment, and then we have 2 separate structures with the back unit having 2 studios, obviously 2-story. We're aware that we're going to need a variance for the height of front and the back units. So that was our option 1. Option 2 is essentially 2 these units just combined and that's to appease the potential issue that we may run in with lot coverage.
Do we have any exterior elevations?
Yes, that's what, and I apologize, we had them today.
Can we accept those since this is
We'll
just a
accept them
presentation?
on the presentation, yeah. If you want to bring those up here, we'll take a look at them.
So I've got a couple of sets here, if you guys can kind of look over each other's shoulders on.
This is the new one.
Thank you.
I think this probably has the, yeah, exterior elevation.
So I think we were essentially going back and forth between one structure that was going to be one structure that was going to be a larger structure, but have all of the units in one building versus two structures that read as kind of a duplex and a two-story garage except it would be apartments, not an actual garage.
What we came up with was, they're just tied together with a breezeway per se, a roof that would be where the two units come together. And now, when you do that, the single studio apartments would move closer, and to create a roof, just a common roof, kind of over this, that ties them together. But then you have apartment and apartment instead of garage and apartment, because the garage and the apartment was never going to fly because of the rules. So now the other version B would be basically sitting on its own on the side. The building, the apartments are identical, other than the one difference is that it's moved closer and a roof ties them together to make them one building.
So is the question, which one do we prefer?
Right now, we're just seeing what would fly.
Okay.
Throwing
And where's the,
Because the original issue was obviously the garage. So at our last meeting, per your guys' advice, that was not going to be allowed. So the one solution that I naturally thought was, well, the heck with the garage. We have parking spots, or we have enough, lot for the parking spot. Why not just convert the bottom portion from garage to an apartment, a studio or something? So now, the next issue that was raised was lot coverage at that point. So would that appease the lot coverage and, the 100-foot requirement for having 4 units? So that's the kind of guidance that we're needing at this point. So,
Again, I don't, do we have the data and the information on what the lot coverage is currently? I mean, is that?
R4, in our initial meeting down here, everything went well, other than the garage, it being a garage on the bottom. Okay, and so it had met everything as far as lot coverages. I think we're really close counts. And so nothing on the initial changed at all. All we did was take the bottom and turn it into an apartment.
And so I think the issue with the garage was that it was a two-story garage.
Right.
And
Correct.
the guidelines do not support a two-story garage in this location.
Yes.
So I think the thing that staff was weighing with the applicant was whether, with a two-story garage not being allowed, would a detached two-story structure that is all apartments but that essentially reads as a garage be any more appropriate, or would it be more appropriate to have it be a single building with 4 units in it?
But you're saying, maybe I'm missing an elevation that shows.
I don't think you are. I think this is all we've got.
Oh, there it is. You're basically, your proposal is to have 2 separate structures. It's just whether or not it's attached with the
Correct.
breezeway or not.
correct.
As opposed to just
Right.
one building.
And the breezeway is supposed to kind of eliminate the two-story garage? Is that kind of the idea?
I think it's just a technicality
Technically.
It is
to
too.
not make it a.
If I'm recalling
One structure.
correctly, and ironically, I think it was Klaus and Cassie who had the most to say about this, so just bad timing. If I'm remembering correctly, the debate was about whether or not every one of the units should have been under one roof, serving as what is the most typical type of multifamily in an HP district, or, if they were going to have two structures, was it acceptable for one of them to operate as a garage with a garage apartment, or did it have to be simply, two more units under that roof? But I think the discussion was about whether it should be one building in its entirety or two structures, because the breezeway to me doesn't solve any of the issues that I recall being a part of the discussion. Not that I think I think the discussion was about one roof or two roofs.
Yeah, and I'd have to dig in and do a little code study.
The reason the original proposal wouldn't go was because of the bottom was a garage, and we were trying to do a two-story garage with a garage apartment, and unless one was abutting, or there was a predominance of them in the area, it wouldn't be allowed. I'd never, in the discussion during that time, had there been anything about them being all common underneath a single roof.
Well, sorry, residences being common under one roof, not the garage.
Right. And so that wasn't in the first one. And so that's why we came up with the possibility, that's even why, there's still two structures even in this proposal.
Well, I guess and I don't want to design your project or tell you what to build or overstep, but just out of curiosity, did you consider or did you research, study just a fourplex? One building with.
Cause a whole complete redesign of the whole project then.
Because right now you're in HP, which is what, 2 dwelling units?
They're HL, and they are zoned, I think, R4 already. So this is one of those weird things where it's R4, so it allows multifamily, but to build multifamily, you have to have a larger lot width than what they have, you have to have a larger lot size than what they have, you can be no more than 20 feet and 1 story tall.
But yet it's in an R4
But yet it's zoned R4, and we have 2-story, 30-foot tall fourplexes and sixplexes sitting on 50-foot wide lots all over the neighborhood. But that's not what the current zoning lets them build. Don't miss our workshop, because we're going to talk about this.
Yeah, I was just trying to try to understand, are you jumping through hoops to make a more complicated project, which in the end, in my opinion,
It's going to struggle.
is going to add money and cost to you and also look out of place and odd.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's going to be hard for us to, I think, I think it'll be hard for us to come to consensus on an approval of something.
Are you talking about with the two structures?
Yeah, I think that the two you're
What we did was we salvaged the 2 front or large structures, the duplex, the initial, and the 2 back are studio. So you kind of appeal to a wider crowd too.
Sure, and I think that it's like I advice, don't have to take it. A lot of times working on projects, you start out with certain given constraints and you get to a solution, and then it's kind of like the tweaking of that solution takes you down this path, and the tweaking and the tweaking. When really you might end up with a better, to just kind of cut bait with that and start with okay, what do I need to do to get this done? If density is not the issue, is going for a spud or a zoning change, or what's best for your project? Because I think we're getting into hoops and technicalities and what do you do to get it by, but is that really, in the end, what's best for you and best for the neighborhood?
So are you just suggesting a traditional fourplex? I would be so much more in favor of that myself.
I would have to do as Katie was mentioning, the code study, or you would have to do the code study to see what it would take to do that, but that seems like that would be more appropriate.
Seems significantly more appropriate.
But is your preference to have two structures like that, or one big one? You separated them originally because of the garage thing, right? But is your preference to have one structure?
I think that our preference is not to go completely back to square one, and that's where it went, so. And then also you kind of look at, like I said, you can take one and, you know, salvage it and make it as a more luxury versus the efficiency back here.
So Katie, is the,
Because we still have the same hoops to jump through on the fourplex.
Yeah.
We've got to ask for variances on that.
well, so with your R4 zoning, what is allowed based on the restrictions of the lot width and so forth?
So R4 allows multifamily, which can be 4 or more units. They can be detached.
So that you can have an accessory structure.
You can have 2 buildings with with dwellings in each building, but it has to be 100-foot lot width. It has to be, I forget what the minimum lot size is, but it's larger than what they have. And then when you are adjacent to a historic preservation or historic landmark district, which they consider a property that is within the district to be adjacent, you have a height limit of 20 feet, 1 story. So they're going to have to get either variances or rezone to address each of those things, no matter how they do this, basically. Neither one of these is a cleaner path to approval, other than the first step is to get a recommendation from HP for either a SPUD if they have to go that path, or a variance. So obviously they want to come forward with a project that HP is going to support and going to recommend a variance for. So that was kind of and understanding that you all can't give your blessing today, but you can provide that feedback on what your concerns are about this proposal versus that proposal. So
Based on everything you just said, understanding that multifamilies are certainly allowable in Jefferson Park and in HP districts in general, it doesn't sound like this is, and this is not me quashing the project, this is just me trying to figure out how to get there. It doesn't really sound like this is a lot that supports much multifamily. I mean, there's nothing on either side of it that's multifamily. We're struggling to figure out, like, there's going to be a variance for every side of it to get there because of the dimensions of the lot coupled with the zoning and the overlay.
they have single family to either side of them, but there is multifamily in the immediate surrounding
Oh, yeah, I
area,
mean, I know there's
so, yeah.
multifamily all over the place. Just with this specific lot, like, it just feels like a really uphill battle.
Feels like we're trying to pack a lot into this little tiny lot.
Yeah.
And I think lot coverage is going to be a major issue for us at some point down the line. And I don't know if that means we got to shrink the size of the footprint of these, which means less units, and obviously, I think less rental income for you guys, which my guess is the main concern. But I think this is going to be a challenge to get across the finish line in its current configuration.
I agree.
So even if he dropped it down to 3,
Yeah.
we're still fighting that battle, right?
Well, probably. I don't know.
What
I
I
don't know because
The building.
I mean, what I'm hearing, just trying to clarify and give you some, like, whether there's, like, the two proposals that you've proposed, like, I don't think they really matter. Like, whether there's a breezeway or not, it's behind the house. I don't think it changes the character from what we're talking about. I think both scenarios, it sounds like you've got a non-compliant use that you're trying to put forward. So whatever mechanism you're going to do to make it conforming, it's my opinion, my observation is it seems like you're doing an odd application to not have to start over when maybe the best solution is to do one building. Because it sounds like you're going to have to get some regulatory relief no matter what you do.
No matter what you do, even with one building.
Yeah.
Katie, is there a lot coverage recommendation or requirement for R4 with the historic landmark thrown in the mix?
There is a lot coverage. Angela, do you remember lot coverage for R4? It's significantly more permissive than
I thought it
R1.
was.
Yes, so they can go much higher.
I mean,
on the lot
just in
coverage
looking at this,
percentage.
even with a much higher coverage minimum or maximum, it still feels like almost every square inch of this is covered. And one thing y'all had to sit through this whole meeting to hear this, so I'm sure you picked up on this. Like, one thing we really want to try to avoid is people coming back and every neighbor in the place throwing a fit and sending in letters, or worse, it gets built and then they're coming, I thought of this with the floodlights, like, if we had approved that, I can't tell you how many neighbors were gonna go to their neighborhood association and complain about the floodlights. So it's something we have the ability to kind of sit back here and look at, like, what is the fallout of this? And as much as I never want to quash anybody's project, especially when, you've got this empty lot and you want to do something and make some money and whatever, it feels like an uphill battle, and it feels like both of these proposals crowd a lot into it. And just to echo David, I mean, I know nobody ever wants to start over, but it also feels like very complicated and a lot of really time-consuming, complicated small changes rather than, there's no need to spend hours making these small tweaks and bring it back to us and us still go, really, it should just be one building that fits within these lot boundaries.
And I guess what I'm saying is, it seems like the project and the density meets the intent of R4. So if the front elevation of the building and how it sits in the district and what you're seeing, I don't think if option 1 is attached, option 2 is detached, option 3 is just one big building, I don't really think it changes much for us. It's more about what you can do and what you can get approved, and what relief you can get.
And from our initial conversation last time we were here, the only issue was the abutting garage apartment. There wasn't one, right? And I think everyone's in consensus that, hey, this thing can get approved, except just there was not an abutting a garage apartment. So now that puts us at 3 units, even at that previous meeting we had. Now, if we were to do, let's just one building, put 3 units, are we reducing, or are we getting rid of that variance so you got to have 100-foot lot width? Or did I hear it was 4 or more, where you have to have 100-foot lot width?
I would have to double check that.
But that's not our regulation to give you relief on, correct?
So let me just backtrack a little bit, because I remember.
Is that a correct statement? Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Katie, is that
So that's
the compliance with R4 isn't HP's jurisdiction, or we don't have the authority to say you can have regulatory relief?
As part of reviewing a project that's within an HL overlay, we have to also look at whether or not they're meeting the requirements of their base zoning. Because we don't want to move forward with a CA, approving a project, saying HP Commission's approved this, but they can't get a building permit because they don't meet the underlying.
Right, but they would have to go to the zoning board of adjustments or get some SPUD relief to do this to begin with.
Yes.
That's not with us to say. Our job is to say, yes, this looks appropriate. We would recommend approval to that body, correct?
Right, yep.
So what I am recalling, and I can't remember if I just saw this site plan the first time and thought this myself, or if this was verbal in your first appearance before us, was there ever at any point in time, was this ever just a proposal for a duplex with a garage? Or maybe not an official proposal, but what I'm recalling is that it was a duplex with a garage, and then you all decided we could add another unit on top of the garage, no?
Initially, the initial presentation was
Well,
duplex
I'm
apartment.
wondering if was it ever
No,
within just the 2 of you? Okay, so that was just in my mind. I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
this
we-
would be
we
a great
submitted
duplex with
with
a
the
garage.
garage.
I'm remembering this case, and I remember it being a 2-story garage, and that being in direct so that's, again, because I think the wording of the SPUD was that the HL overlay would still apply and have to go through design review, and that was a Achilles heel of the two-story garage.
So it doesn't matter if it's 3 units, 4 units under one roof. We need to do our own research through the city to say, hey, there's enough lot coverage for 4 units or 3 units, or there isn't. Or, I mean, is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm saying, and Katie, correct me or add to, is that I don't see any substantial difference in the proposals as it sits from a recommendation from an appropriateness standpoint, or visual aesthetic standpoint. The one issue is not doing something that specifically is counter to the historic guidelines, which the two-story garage would be. And then outside of that, I think I'm comfortable being appropriate with the density and all that, so long as the authority or jurisdiction with authority gives you that regulatory relief.
Yeah, as long as all the guidelines are met, great, go for it. But I just think it's going to be a struggle to get there.
I agree.
We are
But-
all in on, yeah, for sure. And we are all in if it meets the guidelines of historic preservation, yes.
Right.
But I think the project, as I look at it now, I think you're going to struggle with lot coverage and some other things of that nature.
So I think that at this point, we've got some input on the two-story garage, the number of structures, the number of units, the density, the lot coverage, and our next step is probably to sit down again with staff, pull in subdivision and zoning, and kind of revisit those scenarios and what you could do that would meet your needs and would be approvable.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay.
And then in terms of lot coverage, do we have to do concrete, or what can we do?
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to electing our chair and vice chair. I'm assuming we just need discussion and nominations. Is that how this goes? Do we have any nominations?
Can I just nominate Taylor and call this a day and save us all from having to do his job?
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay.
That was quick.
Is that it? Is that all we got to do?
Discussion?
Yeah.
Discussion?
Discussion, objections?
Any citizens that want to be heard on this particular topic?
Better get to vote on it.
Okay, good.
But you could say, let's discuss it. This
Does
is
anybody
your
else want to?
job.
Yeah.
I haven't heard an acceptance from you yet.
Yeah.
I will happily accept this role. I like this. I like this role. I think it's a good role for me. The next is electing.
Are there other
Any?
nominations?
Are there any other nominations?
Absolutely not.
David, do you want it?
No, not present. How do you handle if, like, Klaus wanted to be nominated? I guess he's not
So
out of the room, out of the deal?
I texted Klaus and asked him his thoughts on nomination, both for president and vice president. He would like to step down from his vice president's spot.
Oh, okay.
So we will have an opening there.
So we do have to vote on chair. We nominated and seconded, but we got to take a vote.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Do we,
There was a motion and second.
Okay, so who moved this? Commissioner Jordan or Commissioner Milner? One of, who?
I moved it and he seconded.
Okay. Commissioner Jordan moved it, seconded by Commissioner Milner. All in favor, vote in PrimeGov. Do I vote?
We really vote?
Yes, you get to vote.
I get to vote for myself?
You might need to. Make
Okay.
sure.
What if it doesn't
Make sure it
pass?
carries.
I know.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
Is it-
Mine went away.
Okay, so,
Can we just raise our hands?
you can do a voice vote.
Can we do a verbal vote?
I think we'll have to do a verbal vote.
PrimeGov is retired for the day.
It's almost
5:52.
Commissioner Fudge,
I will vote yay.
Commissioner Gaines,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yay.
Commissioner Milner,
aye.
Commissioner Ramey.
Aye.
Okay. It carries.
Congratulations.
I will hold down this gavel for another year. All right, let's move on to vice chair. Do we have any discussion or nominations? I would nominate Commissioner Jordan if she would like the role.
I will take the role if nobody else wants the role.
I'll second that.
Klaus does not want the role.
Can I even nominate her, though?
That's a motion, and you
I
can't,
can't make a motion.
Oh,
we need somebody else.
That's part of my discussion.
I'll motion, Vice Chair, as Commissioner.
Thank goodness, I was
Jordan.
going to feel very embarrassed.
All right, we
I'll
have a
second. I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Milner, second by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov
Except for we
or
can't.
vote verbally.
Or not.
Commissioner Fudge,
Yay.
Commissioner Gaines,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yay.
Commissioner Milner,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramey.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously as well. Excellent. All right, we will move on to item number 8, communications and reports. We had 6 administrative approvals. Do we need to do anything with those?
Nope.
Okay. Looks like we had 1 withdrawal. Anything we need to do with that?
Nope.
1 administrative closing.
No action.
No action. Anything from City Council's office? From City Council?
Nothing to report from City Council, Board of Adjustment, or Planning Commission.
Rita, anything from the Municipal Councilor's office? Okay, the next regularly scheduled meeting date for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, October 5th at 2 p.m. right here in council chambers. New applications for this meeting were received August 2nd. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, September 13th. And our next regularly scheduled workshop, which we are all going to be at, is Wednesday, September 14th from 11:30 to 1:30 at 420 West Main Street. Any other items from commissioners? Let's welcome Commissioner Gaines back to the Horseshoe. Glad to have you here. He's a seasoned commissioner, has been, did you already introduce him to everybody, Katie?
No, not really.
He-
Not
he's-
officially. I did an email form saying we had a new member, but
Well, he's a seasoned commissioner. He's been here. He's been in the chair for quite some time, and so chair's position for quite some time. And I'm happy you're on the Horseshoe with us.
no.
Yeah. Yeah, good. All right. Any citizens that wish to be heard? No. Meeting is adjourned.